Required by Missouri Statute 67-110, the Board of Education is holding a public hearing on the proposed tax rates for the current year. After the tax rate hearing and later in the regular meeting, tax rates will be voted on by the Board of Education. This will be happening before the Pledge of Allegiance. The Pledge of Allegiance will happen next. We did not forget that. That will happen next. Deputy Superintendent of Finance and Operations, Dr. Amy St. John, is presenting.
Very good. Thank you so much. This is an annual event where we get together and we talk about what the assessed valuation has been for St. Charles County for our school district, and those rates are set for the school year for us to be able to collect our local tax levy. As a reminder, there are 4 funds that a school district is made up of under the Missouri Statute 165.011. When I talk about the operating levy, that will include funds 1, 2, and 4, and then when I talk about the debt service levy, that'll be Fund 3. This is the public notice that has been available for the last 7 days that gives the estimated information that I'll be sharing with you this evening, and I'll break down each one of those different areas. As a reminder, the primary factors in calculating the tax rate include the operating levy, which include the assessed valuation of our residential and personal property, which is a breakdown of the reassessment, the occupancy for our county, new construction and improvements, and those are a part of the board equalization action. In addition to that, the calculation for the consumer price index, and then the Hancock Amendment is part of capping the revenue growth, and I'll talk a little bit about that this evening. And then finally, under debt service, that is comprised of what we have calculated to be the payments that we have for our debt service for the school year. Each of our assessed valuation is based upon these 4 categories: residential, agricultural, commercial, and personal property. And you take the value of that asset and then you multiply it by the market value in each of those categories. And that's how it's determined in sum total to be the assessed valuation for the school district or taxing entity. Those primary categories for us are in real estate and then personal property, and you can see how the information has been broken down in those 2 areas. This year compared to last year, we saw an increase of 9.72% in real estate and actually a decrease in personal property by 4.12%. You might ask what causes a decrease. It can often just mean that people are not buying and selling their cars, but they have depreciated over that year. The assessed valuation for our new construction has gone up by just over $7 million, which is an increase of 18.36%. Next, within each of the categories, residential, commercial, agricultural, personal property, and railroad, you've heard me talk before that we predominantly receive our local taxes from residential, so that portion of that pie chart would be 76.57% of our funds come from residential, which I'll talk about in a minute regarding legislation that is related to that. Here's our assessed valuation history. You might remember that we are assessed on odd years, so it being 2025, we were assessed. The full amount was assessed at 7.73% of an increase, but that includes both the operating and the debt service components. You can see through the years in those odd numbers, you're going to see the spike in those, and then have included there for you what that 10-year span looks like for an average of an increase of 6%, and the average increase in the reassessment years, the odd years, is just over 6%, so 6.3%. When talking about the Hancock Amendment, this was put into place several years ago, and the purpose of the Hancock Amendment is for the ability for the growth spike to not be fully absorbed. So it's putting a cap on that, and it puts a 3-pronged test into place. And so in this particular year, you can see how I've spelled out the actual assessment growth was 7.73. We have to pick the lower of these 3 numbers. So it's or the inflation rate, which is based upon the consumer price index, which was 2.9%, or a flat 5%. So in our case, we had to pick the lower, which is 2.9%. This is not a discretionary calculation. This is just us taking the numbers that come from the county and we populate those into the calculation sheet, and it produces the information for us. This is the history of the Consumer Price Index. You can see that through the years it also ebb and flows and has a high of 7% through the years in 2022 and a low of 0.7 in 2016. Its average is just over 3%. In looking at the debt service, it too is a calculated number that, again, we're populating that with what we believe to be the payments that we'll be making on our debt. It calculates a max amount that we can charge in that levy category. So our current levy rate was at 67.13. We could go up to 0.7722. However, our bond language actually dictates that we have to roll that back about 10 cents and we have to stay at 67.13. So that's not a choice. Again, that's just part of the calculation that we have here in our school district. And the next couple of slides are just showing you some comparison numbers through the this year compared to last year. Whereas our operating levy will now be set at $3.30, which is a decrease from the prior year, which was $3.41. And again, the debt service remaining the same at 0.6713. We received these numbers in the spring, and that helps us to set the budget into motion. So you might ask the question, is this somewhere in the neighborhood of what we thought the answer was going to be? And it is coming in close to what we had calculated and set the budget for. So we set the budget at $3.94, 3.949, and then we're coming in now at 3.9769. So we're very close to where we had estimated. So once the taxes start coming in, we'll just start monitoring that to make sure that we are on par for what we're estimating to be that collection. And again, the information starts to come in the spring and over the summer and gives us information. And then if anyone decides that they would like to contest their taxes, it has to then go to the Board of Equalization again, and then we get a final answer. So we have the first number that comes in before the Board of Equalization, and then we have the number that comes in after. So our final number is $4.1 billion for our school district. You might ask, how does this compare to our neighboring school districts? And so to train your eye on that top section is the 2025 numbers for each of our area school districts. The total levy is the middle kind of number there, and then at the bottom you can see what the rate was for them in the prior year as well as for us. And you can see that everyone is just slightly lower. So what that means to the homeowner in our school district as well as our neighboring districts is that their tax bill will be slightly less at the end of this year than it was the prior year. And then this is just showing you the where they rank within each of the, that is the total levy, and then that is the operating levy, which is at the $3.30. And then the debt service is just slightly lower, or excuse me, just slightly higher than Fort Zumwalt. Theirs is at 65 cents, ours is at 67 cents. And then finally, to wrap it up, it's just to show what new revenue has come into the district, and that's the $5.4 million. And that's an assumption of 100% collection rate, so that's what I was mentioning. We'll monitor that as it starts to come in, and we'll see if that's the collection rate that we are still experiencing. And then the final slide is to let homeowners know that, again, per $100,000 of their market value, they would have a savings of $21.56 on this tax bill that they would expect to see in November. Legislative connections to this, and I'll speak more about this in my finance and operations presentation, but the residential property that I mentioned there is what most of the legislation has started to talk about. That includes Senate Bill 190, which is eligible seniors over the age of 62. And then Senate Bill 3 is actually a property tax freeze for all homeowners, all residential property. And that starts, that would be freezing those numbers of September of 2024. So if that went into play, then actually we would go backwards in time. This would be considered the highest amount that we would receive. And then just last week, we were actually, we were told that the House Joint Resolution 5, 6, 7, and 8, and they are proposing to actually eliminate personal property tax, which is a very large category, and I'll talk about that more in the finance and operations presentation. Any questions or clarifications?
Work. Thank you very much. We'll talk more when you come back up.
Yes, there you go.
At this time, before we do the Pledge of Allegiance still, members of the public are invited to comment on the proposed tax rates. This is different than the patron comments that you may have already signed up for. This is a different category of comments. If there's a member of the public who wants to come forward right now and speak regarding the proposed tax rates, you are invited to do so. Seeing no one moving forward to the microphone, we will move forward with the rest of the meeting. We will close the tax rate public hearing part of the agenda and then begin with the next part of our time together. In this case, it is the Pledge of Allegiance. So our pledge leaders are going to lead us, and the Pledge of Allegiance today are from Henderson Elementary. They are part of Henderson's 5th grade house leader team. Please welcome Sophie Malia from the House of Friendship and Kyra from the House of Perseverance. Please come forward. I invite you all to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. Before we move to the agenda, I want to remind you that our mission here is to empower students to be lifelong learners prepared for the future. We have a strategic plan, FHSD 2030. You can find it on your phones, on our website. You can also see QR codes as well. This is what our agenda is aimed for. And the board is going to say one piece of our vision before we move to the next point. So, Director Hardy.
Recognized as one of the top 5% high-performing districts in the state.
The employer of choice for talented educators, leaders, and staff.
Fiscally sound with a track record of smart long-term planning.
Known for graduating well-rounded students who are equipped with the skills and experiences they need to be successful in the world.
Celebrated for the work we've done on culture, morale, and ensuring all members of our community feel safe and welcome.
Trusted by families and the community to make good decisions and do what is best for students.
This agenda has been created to make us closer to these goals as we move forward towards 2030. So board, I have a motion to approve the agenda for September 18th, 2025 as presented.
Second.
Director Pushkar with the motion, second with Director Ponder. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. The motion passes. Jennifer Joles, the district's Chief Communications Officer, will present an update on the strategic plan. Ms. Joles.
Thank you, President Blair. So as you'll recall, the board-approved strategic plan includes 12 key performance indicators, or KPIs. We have 3 for each pillar. And we thought that this would be a good time to share the baseline data for those KPIs, essentially a picture of where we started before our action teams really dive into the work this fall. And then our plan is to present a similar update each fall for the next 5 years so we can see the progress made over time. So tonight I'll be sharing one slide or dashboard for each of the 4 pillars. We're gonna look at lots of numbers. Stephen already took my thunder here, so you know you can find the strategic plan on the district website. There's a button where you can download an easy to follow plan for yourself. So pillar 1 is teaching and learning. The 3 KPIs in this area measure student achievement, reading, and real-world ready skills. The column shaded in blue shows our starting point, and then the column on the right with the yellow numbers shows where we want to be by the year 2030. For student achievement, you'll see our goal is that 70% of all students will be achieving at proficient or advanced levels by the year 2030. Currently, we're at 62.8%. This represents the combined performance on both MAP and end of course, or EOC, exams for all grades and all tested content areas. For students in a student group, as defined by DESE, our goal is 50%, and we're currently at 39.5%. Our next KPI in this pillar measures reading skills. Our goal by the year 2030 is that 80% of students will be reading on grade level. This KPI uses the end of school year Lexile scores. As you can see in the blue shaded column on the left, 58.8% of students are currently reading on grade level by the end of 3rd grade, 64.2% by the end of 5th grade, and 71.4% by the end of 8th grade. The final Pillar 1 KPI seeks to measure the degree to which students are ready to take on life after high school. We will soon be embarking on a community-wide process to develop a portrait of a graduate. And since this tool does not exist yet, there's no baseline data to share, but I did want to share for those who are unfamiliar, a portrait of a graduate is a comprehensive vision of the knowledge, skills, and attributes a district wants its students to possess upon graduation, aiming to prepare them for success in college, careers, and life. It goes beyond the traditional academic measures to define the desirable qualities and job-ready skills and experiences. So we expect this work to begin this winter, and we'll be sharing ways for the community to be involved in that process. Moving on to Pillar 2, this is all about people and workforce. We have 3 KPIs in this pillar, and they measure teacher retention, employee satisfaction, and qualified educators. So teacher retention is calculated annually by dividing the number of retirements and resignations through August by the number of teachers returning for the new school year. As you'll see in yellow, our goal by the year 2030 is to retain 92% of educators. Our current teacher retention rate, shown in the blue shaded column, is 90.7%. This means that 90.7% of educators who worked during the 23-24 school year returned to work for Francis Howell in the 24-25 school year. The next KPI will measure employee satisfaction, and a survey is currently in development, so again, no baseline data to share with you tonight on that. The final Pillar 2 KPI measures the percentage of teachers that are fully and appropriately certified at the time of hire. Our goal is 95% by the year 2030, and as you'll see again in that blue shaded column, 92.9% of teachers hired for the 24-25 school year were fully certified. Others were appropriately certified, but not fully, which means that they held a temporary or provisional certificate. Pillar 3 is finance and operations, and the 3 KPIs in this area measure fund balance, audit performance, and stakeholder views about how the district spends taxpayer funds. We are currently achieving 2 of the 3 KPIs in this pillar. Board policy establishes 15%, as you know, as a baseline expectation for the district's fund balance. As of June 30, the fund balance was 29.7%. And again, as you know, the fund balance fluctuates regularly and is constantly monitored. For the purposes of the KPI dashboard and to ensure consistency year over year, the fund balance will be updated once a year on this dashboard and will always reflect June 30 data, although you get the regular updates from Dr. St. John regularly at the board meetings. The second KPI has to do with audits. The annual audit is filed by December 31st each year, and our goal is to have 0 findings. The dashboard you see here represents the most recent audit, which was clean with 0 findings. And then the final Pillar 3 KPI is where we have the most work to do. It has to do with community perceptions about responsible spending. We distribute a stakeholder survey each year, typically in May, and there's a question on that survey that you may recall. It asks community members if the district spends taxpayer funds effectively and efficiently. In the most recent survey, 31.8% of stakeholders agreed or strongly agreed with this statement, and you'll see that our goal is that 70% would agree with that statement. So again, we know we have some work to do there. Our 4th and final pillar is safety and security. This is the only pillar where the target for all 3 KPIs is set at 100%. As a quick reminder, the 3 KPIs in this area have to do with students and staff feeling safe at school and at work, having safe and secure facilities, and preventing cyber attacks. In terms of how people feel about safety, 90.5% of Francis Howell students say they feel safe at school. We do not currently have baseline data for how staff feel safe at school. at work, many times at school. But again, that same survey that will measure employee satisfaction will also take on that question as well. So for the next update, we'll have that to share with you. In terms of physical security, our new safety director, Randy Jemerson, and his team are conducting regular safety audits and ensuring that all schools hold the appropriate number of emergency drills. DESE is currently in the process of developing a standardized safety audit tool that all Missouri schools are going to be required to use. This was one of the provisions included in Senate Bill 68, which was just signed into law in July. Once that tool is released, we will be able to measure our safety protocols against the state standard, and we'll update the KPI dashboard accordingly. Until then, we continue with our current practices for safety audits and drills. Our final Pillar 4 KPI has to do with data privacy and protection, essentially how we prevent cyber attacks from disrupting learning and compromising personal and business information. The district's technology director, Mr. Scott Gowan, works with vendors to track and address reported vulnerabilities. And one tool they use to identify potential threats is the weekly Homeland Security Report from CISA, which is the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. Did I get that right? On that particular tool, 100% of identified cybersecurity vulnerabilities were appropriately mitigated in the 24-25 school year. Moving forward, the source data for this KPI will be expanded to include other reports and tools in addition to CISA. This will give you, am I saying it right? CISA. This will give us a more comprehensive view of how well we are managing cybersecurity risks and protecting student and staff data. So that is the quick version of the KPI dashboard. And then next month at the October board meeting, that will be our first more substantial pillar update, where we'll have each of our pillar leaders come up and give you a little more detail beyond the numbers, just about the work that's been accomplished over the last few months and then what's ahead. So we look forward to sharing that with you, and we will do that sort of report quarterly just to keep you apprised of all the actions there. And so I do believe next on the agenda is special recognitions. You want me to
Yeah,
go?
next we have the student board representative, Ms. Jules.
There we go. All right, and here I am. Okay. Our student board representative this month is from Bryan Middle School, and as you know, the purpose of the student board rep program is to honor and recognize talented students, elevate student voice, and provide growth opportunities in the areas of public speaking, leadership, and governance. Students are selected for this honor by their principal with input from the student body. They have an opportunity to prepare and deliver a short speech to the board and public that is focused on their school or the district. And with that, I'll invite Assistant Principal Dr. Amy Ridling from Bryan to the podium to introduce our board rep for tonight.
Good evening. My name is Amy Ridling, and I have the privilege of serving as Assistant Principal at Bryan Middle School. Tonight, I'm truly honored to introduce Bryan Middle School Student Board Representative, Tamika Barlow. Over the past 3 years, I've had the joy of watching Tamika grow as a leader. She's an outstanding 8th grader who embodies leadership, character, and service. 2 years ago, we launched a group called Bryan Ambassadors with the goal of creating a student leadership team to welcome new students and help them feel the true sense of belonging in our community. We sought students who were welcoming, outgoing, and kind, and Tamika has been all of that and more. As an active member of our ambassadors, she has given countless tours to new students, guided our 5th grade visits, and supported transition day activities. She's often the first friendly face that new students see, and she ensures that they feel at home from the very start. Tamika's leadership extends well beyond ambassadors. She participates in the Missouri Youth in Government program, the Spectra program, and has been recognized for her positive character and leadership as a Bryan Middle School Bright Star in 2025. Outside of school, Tamika continues to shine. She's an active member in her church youth group, enjoys riding horses, and loves spending time with her mini bulldog Chubbs. She's even working towards her CPR, first aid, and AED certification, further proof of her dedication of learning skills to help others. Tamika is a remarkable young leader who is already making a meaningful impact in both in and outside of school. We are incredibly proud to have her represent Bryan Middle School as our student board representative. Please join me in welcoming Tamika Barlow.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Tamika Barlow, an 8th grader at Bryan Middle School. I've spent my whole life in the Francis Howe School District, starting at Cosley Elementary, and next year I'll be stepping into Francis Howe High School as a freshman. But before I take that step, I would like to take a moment to reflect on how Bryan Middle has shaped me. I have been a part of the Spectre program since the first grade, and through these years, I've discovered the true value of community, leadership, and connection. One of the roles I am most proud of is being a Bryan Ambassador. We are a group dedicated to welcoming new students, leading tours, and making sure that everyone, whether it's a 5th grader visiting from an elementary school or a new student transitioning from a further middle school, feels safe and supported here. Being an ambassador has taught me the importance of kindness and friendship. It is something I carry with me every day. Our goal is to make Bryan a place where everyone belongs, and that mission has shaped me into a more confident person. In addition to being an ambassador, I've also been involved in Missouri Youth in Government. In this program, I've had the chance to step into the shoes of a legislator, learning how laws are made and how bills are passed. This November, we will be traveling to Jefferson City to participate in the state legislature, and I could not be more excited. It's a real-world experience that I hope it will show me the power of teamwork, debate, and creating positive skills that I will use in my high school career and further and beyond. One of the reasons I love Bryan is it has been such a special place since the beginning because of its community. It is a place where you are seen and heard, and the teachers genuinely care about our success. I have been so lucky to have so many of these adults who have supported me. For example, Mr. Pearson, my Spectre teacher. He's always connected life lessons to what we are learning, making every lesson feel relevant and meaningful. And then there's Mr. Rizzo, my counselor. If you've met him, you know how amazing he is at making everyone feel welcome. He's a true leader, and I don't think Bryan Middle would be the same without him. In conclusion, Bryan Middle has shaped me to who I am, confident, involved, and ready to take on high school. I'm incredibly grateful for the friendships I've made, the lessons I've learned, and the support I've received here. As I move forward, I will always carry a little piece of Bryan with me. Thank you for your time and being a part of this incredible journey.
They said no.
It's your moment.
Can we see you, Steven? Yeah.
Okay, Mark, take one side. Yeah, perfect. Right there. Perfect.
Right? Okay.
Perfect. Thanks, you guys.
Congratulations.
Welcome, Tamika. We're happy to have you here tonight as our student representative. You are welcome to ask questions of any of the situations that we're going to be talking about tonight. And other than that, if you wanted to, feel free to ask or, yeah. Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you so much, Tamika. We're moving towards patron comments. During patron comments, residents of the district and staff members are invited to address the Board of Education on issues related to the school district. Speakers are called forward in the order of sign-up, and each speaker has 3 minutes to make their remarks. Please remember that only one speaker is allowed at the podium at a time, and combining time or giving your time to someone else is not permitted. The board appreciates that you have taken the time to come this evening, and we value both your input and your perspective. I'd like to remind everyone that we expect that speakers will remain civil and respectful when giving remarks. If anyone fails to comply with board policies, regulations, and rules, we reserve the right to cut those 3 minutes short. We also ask that patrons in the audience remain quiet in order to be respectful of the speaker's allotted time. And so right now, we welcome Jeff Bridges to come forward.
Not that Joe. I started my timer. Good evening, Superintendent Delaney, Board President Blair, members of the Board of Education, and to the Francis Howell students and parents here this evening. My name is Jeff Bridges, and I serve as the president of the Francis Howell Hockey Club, a role which I have held for the past 3 years. This is my 4th year on the hockey board and my 5th year with the club. I'm here this evening, along with many of our parents and players from both clubs at Francis Howell and Francis Howell Central, united in the hope that this board will open the door to allow our student athletes into the Francis Howell family again. When I became a member of the hockey club's board of directors, one of the very first things I heard from our hockey families was, it would sure be great if we could get the district to recognize us. The second semester of my son's freshman year, I received a letter from the district encouraging Caleb to become involved in Francis Howell activities. The letter said it was important to be part of the student experience, that it helped prepare students for bigger life challenges outside of high school, to which I completely agree. I responded to that letter and pointed out that he was involved, playing that year on the varsity and junior varsity hockey teams. I asked, what could we do to have those students recognized? How could we, the hockey club, help make that happen? I heard nothing from the athletic department. In 2023, Francis Howell Central President Mike Hurlbert, who you'll hear from a little later, and I joined in sending a letter to this very board asking for guidance and how we could become more involved in the district. We exchanged emails with some members of this current board and felt like we might be making progress. Unfortunately, nothing happened. I'm going to run out of time, so I'm going to skip ahead. What do we need from the board? Funding? No, we raise all of our own money. Coaches? We hire and pay our own coaches. Student security? Every parent volunteer undergoes a background check and mandatory child protection training. What are we asking for? Recognition. We're here to ask that our student athletes be recognized in announcements at their respective schools, recognition of their achievements on and off the ice, be a part of the homecoming celebrations, and inclusion in the yearbook. We currently have to pay to have our student athletes included in the yearbook. What we're asking the district to do on October 31st, when our varsity season kicks off, we would love to hear the announcement say, "Good morning, Francis Howell students. Tonight, your Vikings hockey team will take on Francis Howell Central at 8 o'clock. Let's go show up for another Vikings victory." Sorry, Central. So here we are tonight, asking you, each of you, how can we make this happen? We are excited about the opportunity and would be delighted to have further conversation. Thank you.
Up next is Caleb Bridges. Caleb Bridges.
Good evening, members of the board, faculty, and community. My name is Caleb Bridges, and I'm a senior this year at Francis Howell. I'm here to speak on behalf of the high school hockey team, my team, and why we believe it's time for the district to recognize us. I put on my first pair of skates when I was just 4 years old, and hockey has been a part of my life for as long as I can remember. But at our school, unlike other sports, our team isn't recognized. That means no access to school resources, no place for us in the yearbook unless we pay for it, no announcements, and no pep rallies. Despite that, we still wear our school's name with pride every time we hit the ice. For the past 3 seasons that I've been on the team, we've practiced 2 or 3 times during the week after school, played games late at night, while our parents paid out of pocket for ice time, gear, and coaches. We compete hard and have represented our school with class and sportsmanship. Our roster includes students who are not only dedicated athletes, but also strong students, volunteers, and leaders. We follow the same values our school promotes, such as teamwork, academics, discipline, and commitment. Recognition isn't just about a banner or a trophy. It's about showing students that their hard work matters, even if they play a sport that's less traditional. It's about giving younger players a reason to stay involved and feel included. And it's about building school spirit through another team we can all be proud of. I understand there are a lot of things to consider, but what we're asking for is a chance to have a seat at the table like other teams do. We're not just skating for ourselves, we're for skating for our school, and we'd love for the school to skate with us too. Thank you for your time, and I hope you'll consider recognizing the hockey teams.
Thank you. Up next is John Giddens.
Thank you. My name is John Giddens. I serve as the president for Francis Howell Central Hockey. Pretty much Jeff Bridges covered a lot of it, so I'm going to skip through my prepared statement. Last year, the Howell Central team was allowed to be a part of the homecoming festivities. It was a great experience for our players, be out in the community, be with their peers. This year, we expected to be part of it again. Although the athletic director explained to us that we were allowed to be a part of it in error. I feel pretty disheartened by this decision. That's why we brought this to the board, and working with Francis Howell, we believe it's time to have these discussions. It's time to bridge the gap between our non-sport sponsored sports. I will tell you, over half of my education has been in a Francis Howell classroom. I take pride in that. My roots are here. I know other districts that allow their hockey teams to take part, because I transferred from Howell over to Zumwalt. I got that first experience. All we're asking is for the board to take into consideration, allow these players to be a part of the high school. We don't need the money, we don't need any funding. And we have standards. It's the student before athlete. We preach that. You see our students, our players, your students have the highest GPAs. You know, they take their education seriously, and so do we. And that's why we're asking for this bridge, this relationship we're here to build with the school district. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Up next is John Heidreeder.
Good evening. My name is John Heidreeder. I've been a resident in St. Charles for 45 years, and I've been pleased to be here in the district the last 15 years. I think this is the fourth time I've addressed this forum. I appreciate this opportunity to do it again. I've offered to help craft a unified mission statement for all the stakeholders in this district, and that offer still stands. 84 years ago, on December 7th, we had a wake-up call when Pearl Harbor was attacked. And 24 years ago, and now a few more days, we had a wake-up call when we had 9/11 and 5 plane attacks. 8 days ago, Charlie Kirk was murdered, assassinated. And that was really a wake-up call for me. I believe that we've got work to do to address the hearts of our folks. I think Charlie was working real hard to do that, but now we can, I think, really dig in and do some more hard work. I see that there's a disparity between what I would call truth and the things that Charlie advocated. And in spending a lot of time in on and off over the last year looking at various things, and the upper leadership of the NEA, the AFT, which I don't think necessarily is reflected here in the teachers in this district per se, but several $100 million of our my taxpayer dollars have went to these organizations that are supporting things that I don't believe are true. I don't want my money going there. So I would continue to offer to lead an effort to see if we can unify with all the stakeholders a mission statement and to carefully purge, surgically remove things that are filtering down in our education at times that are in fact not true. So President Blair, I respect you and I believe that you could help in that endeavor along with the other fine members. I offered 5 names last time. That still stands, and I will render this to writing to the board, to administration, and to the teachers union as I've done in the past. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Up next is Justine Glancy.
We've had some tall people here tonight. Let's move this down. Good evening, everyone. Nice to see you, board. I just want to piggyback off of what the gentlemen were saying with the hockey club. I am Justine Glancy. I serve as the board treasurer for the Francis Howell Hockey Club. I'm also a proud parent of a player on our JV team. He's right over there. I also have 4 boys in the district, so I'd imagine I have some more hockey boys coming up in the club. So that's why it's very important to me personally, but also for our community. So when I speak tonight, I'm speaking both as a parent who sees firsthand the commitment these kids give and as a volunteer who helps keep the program running. Our players are truly remarkable. They juggle practices, late night games, and schoolwork. They support each other on and off the ice. They show up every day with pride in wearing Francis Howell's name across their jerseys. They do not do it because they have to, but because they love this sport. It is a very great sport. And the friendships, discipline, and life lessons it gives them. And they are guided by coaches who work just as hard. Our coaches dedicate countless hours, late nights, weekends, not only to teaching hockey, but to mentoring these kids as students and young people. Their leadership and commitment are a huge part of what makes this program so special. We're not here tonight asking for money or oversight. What we're asking for is something way more meaningful, and that is recognition. The same kind of recognition that their peers in football, basketball, baseball, softball, volleyball, and all these other sports receive. Our kids put in the same hours, the same sweat, and the same heart. The only difference is that it's not a sanction by Misha. But these kids are every bit the student athletes you'd be proud to stand behind. Currently, we have around 40 varsity and JV players with another 20 to 25 middle school kids coming up. I mean, there's a lot of younger hockey players coming up. So this is very important that they're recognized and they get to be seen like all the other athletes. But at the heart of all this, it's just about the kids who want to feel seen. They want to know when they skate out in Francis Howell colors, their school is standing behind them, just like every other team. This recognition costs the district nothing, but for our players, it means everything. It tells them your hard work matters. Your school is proud of you and you belong here. On behalf of all my boys, our players, our coaches, our families, and our community, thank you for considering this request. These kids have earned this recognition, and I truly hope you'll help give it to them. I also would like to invite everybody out to the games. Come see hockey, come see why it's such an awesome sport and why I'm up here. Thank you. Have a good night.
Up next is Danny Angelo.
Have a few photos. Can I pass those on to the board by chance? You're right. Okay. Did my time already start? Nope. 3 minutes is going to be tough for me. I know if the parents in our club are expecting that. So, good evening. Thank you for having us here tonight. My name is Danny Angelo. I happen to be the head hockey coach for Francis Howell High School Hockey Club. I'm also a proud parent of 2 students within the Francis Howell district. My daughter is a senior at Francis Howell High School, and then my son is a sophomore. He's also part of our
hockey club as well. So I come tonight not just as a coach, but someone deeply invested both in the development and the recognition, of our student athletes. I will try to keep this brief. I will also not try to rehash everything that some of the other parents have said, but I do want to echo the core ask, and that is that our hockey team be recognized, specifically during during school announcements, I should say. This is not about vanity. It's about visibility. It's about inclusion. As Justine just mentioned, our athletes work very, very hard, both on and off the ice. And they excel far beyond the hockey rink. At the end of each season, we recognize our players not only for their performance on the ice, but for achievements in the classroom. I'm happy to share that last season, 23 of our 33 players earned academic honors across a number of categories. That includes 7 players with a 4.0 GPA or higher, 7 players with a 3.5 to a 3.99 GPA, and then 9 players at a 3.0 to a 3.49. These truly are student athletes in every sense of the word. With respect to the photos that I shared, I would like to call out the first photo. It has 3 of our players listed on there, so if everybody can see that. That's a photo of our senior night. We honor our seniors and their families as we do every year. But what I would like to point your attention to isn't just the players in the photo, it's the stands behind them. Every seat in the stand is virtually empty. There's no students in the stands, And these are incredible young men and women who give years to this program. While their families show up, the student body's not there. They're not aware of what's going on. They're not aware that we're playing games, and they're not there to recognize their peers at school. Second photo is a little bit harder to talk about. So last season, the hockey community suffered a pretty big loss. A young man by the name of Colin Brown was a player for CDC who was killed while driving home with his father. What the photo that you have in front of you shows you.
Thank you. Your time is up.
Okay.
Up next is Michael Hurlbert. And while Michael is coming forward, thank you for the picture. And if you want to send the rest of your story to the board, we would love to have you send the email so the board can hear the rest of your story, please.
Thank you very much. You hear me? Thank you very much, board members. Appreciate your service. I know a couple of you closely, personally, so it's good to see you again. I am a hockey dad. I'm a hockey coach. I'm a hockey board member, or at least I was. I'm no longer doing that. My kids have all graduated. I served on the Francis Howell Central Hockey Board for 7 years, from 2017 to 2024. And I stand before you not as a current board member or current hockey parent, because they're all gone, they're all done playing, but as a former board member and a former hockey dad. I truly enjoyed that experience, not just because ice hockey is by far the coolest sport around, but more so because the relationships that are built between the families, between the coaches, the families, the board members, everybody involved. It's a true esprit de corps. We all had incredible pride representing Francis Howell schools. As with any school sports team, they would be very much like to let their fellow students and families know more about it through advertising, posting about games and events, school announcements, simple things like use of the trophy cases, participating in school activities like homecoming and senior signing day. Sadly, a policy was put in place years ago that does not allow any of that collaboration and alienates them and the Francis Howell School District from all other, how they support their clubs, their club sports. Howell's the only one that does that in St. Charles County. Everyone else is involved. We are asking that you and your fellow members of the board, school board, please reconsider this policy. There are many club sports that will benefit from the greater inclusion. In addition, it provides a great opportunity to showcase all the clubs and activities that abound in our school district, especially to future students and families. Back in 2022, as Jeff mentioned, I was president of the club, and along with Jeff, we co-signed a letter that we sent to you all. And I want to thank Mark and Jane. They had reached out to us as board members, and we appreciate that. I'd heard last year that the clubs were allowed to participate.
Thank you. Your time is up.
Wow, that was fast.
Up next, we have comments from FHEA, our teachers union.
Good evening. My name is Francine Hill, and I am the president of FHEA. We want to thank all our staff for a great start to the new school year. We know some of you are working in uncomfortable conditions due to air conditioning issues, and it's a testament to your dedication that you showed up every day to educate our students. FHEA hopes the facilities can address these issues soon. We realize they're short-staffed, but we hope the solution is in the works. FHEA is looking forward to working with Dr. St. John to get an understanding of the new absence reporting system. We also appreciate the board's interest in ensuring equity among our schools for special area schedules. FHEA wants to reinforce our support of following district procedures and policy guidelines when challenging books or resources. Calling an individual teacher out by name on social media for using books available in our school library instead of starting a productive process serves no purpose. We fully support our parents' right to make a decision about what their child reads. Please reach out to your child's teacher with any concerns. We always want to respect a parent's personal choices. Education works better as a team. Let's work together. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next is FISPA.
President Blair. Good evening. My name is Jennifer Vineyard. I am the FISPA Vice President of Clerical Staff. Today marks one full month of the 25-26 school year, and our staff and students have had an excellent start to the school year. We would like to extend a warm welcome to all new members of our Francis Howell community, our new staff, students, and families. Your presence enriches our school district, and we are excited to have you with us. In our ongoing commitment to providing exceptional educational experiences, we recognize the vital role our support staff plays in the success of our schools. Currently, we have numerous openings across the district, including positions for paraprofessionals, custodians, maintenance staff, bus drivers, and bus monitors. These roles are essential in creating a safe, supportive, and efficient learning environment for our students. We invite individuals who are passionate and dedicated to making a positive impact to consider joining our team. At Francis Howell, we pride ourselves on fostering a collaborative and inclusive workplace where every member contributes to the success of our students. Thank you for your continued support as we work together to ensure our students receive the best education.
Thank you. The board, do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda for September 18th, 2025 as presented? Kruskar first.
Second.
Second for Greider. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Motion passes. Board, have a motion to approve the tax rate as presented. Director Kruskar, Director Ponder for the second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed say no. Motion passes. Board, I have a motion to approve the Finance and Operations Report as presented. Director Pushkar? Second, Vice President Greider. Deputy Superintendent of Finance and Operations, Dr. Amy St. John, is presenting.
Hello again. Back to the short people. Familiar slide, green light. It's good. We're in good shape. So we're good in terms of tracking our revenue. We're good in green on tracking expenditures. So we look at that the full month over a year ago, the same month, and we look to make sure that the percentages are looking on par. This is a summary slide of that information. It also gives you an update on where we are with the fund balance. That changes just slightly each month as those expenditures and revenues start to come in, and we're recalculating that. Next month, we do anticipate bringing you the first budget amendment, and that is due to the allocations mostly. We receive those just after school begins, and so it's that time of year where we kind of reset that and we look to see what we need to do for the current budget that we've set in motion. This is a slide that's going to be updated each month as well, and it's a little bit different view. So this, you are used to seeing a slide that looks like this, and what I would like to do is to kind of break that down for you just a little bit. So this is the full version of the revenues on top. I'll just chain your eye to kind of see what we're looking at on the left side here. The revenues are on the top. The green is the year that we are living. The two to the left are actual expenditures for the years of 24 and 25 school years. And then to the right, those are the projections. And sometimes I get asked the question, how do you live in a balanced budget the current year that you're in, but then it looks as if the coming years that there's sort of like this fall off and the fund balance changes down dramatically. And so what I would like to do is just to kind of give you that visualization, the right side chart and the arrows are pointing. So that's going to give you what assumptions that I have put into the spreadsheet in order to calculate that out for the next 3 projection years. And the reason that you do the projection years is so that you can look to see if there's anything you need to monitor in the year that you're living. And so what we have for you is this is our picture as we know it today. So what we do is on the years for which a reassessment occurs, we increase that by that 3% because as I just showed you in the tax rate hearing, that was 2.9%. So that's a very conservative approach for us to take. And non-reassessment years are at 2%, and that's really mostly because you still can receive the change in that new construction. And so that's the assumptions that are put into place. Many changes have occurred with the state adequacy target, and as you know, as we built the budget that we are currently living, it's not a guarantee that that number is going to go up. So for projection purposes, you keep that number flat. However, with gross pay, we have a conservative 3%, including STEP and the cost that it takes in order for the salary schedule to be able to do that. Benefits at 8%. Again, that is a conservative number. We know last year the number came in much higher at about 23%, I believe, in that increase. So 8% is a conservative expenditure in that projection. And then still showing that $5 million transfer for capital expenditures for those coming years. So this is the full breakdown that goes with the chart that you're used to seeing. And so this just gives us a full understanding of where we are and where the future could hold in terms of that information. I'll take you through a few more familiar slides and then I'll bring you back to that kind of thinking in terms of some effects that may be on the horizon in terms of legislation. Our bond financials are also a familiar slide that you see each month, and those are as we spin down those for the projects. And so Loom Stetzer will be here shortly to give you a little bit more information as to the projects that we're moving into phase 2, as well as some things that are on the horizon for the next facility master plan, but be able to show where this information is. Our self-insurance fund, this is the health insurance that we have for the school district. We had a successful first meeting this week on Tuesday. We had the employee insurance committee. And the team were able to take this full spreadsheet, this full expenditure report and look at it and break it down and understand the revenues that we have coming in compared to the expenditures that we have going out. And this is something that we'll definitely need to keep an eye on as the year goes on, but that team does plan to meet each month, and we will be able to have much more further conversations in those meetings. The legislative update, up to this point, I've just been sharing information about Senate Bill 3, which is information that is connected to the local property tax, as I just mentioned, and I showed you how more than 75% of our revenue comes from those local taxes that are connected to the residential. And at my best guesstimate calculations, the first year, should that Senate bill go into play, that would be a $4 million loss to the school district. It starts to show $4 million, $8 million, $10 million, and if you stretch it out to 5 years, it could be as much as $20 million per year in loss. More information came on September the 9th, and that was House Joint Resolutions 5, 6, 7, and 8, and that is where the House Special Committee on Property Tax Reform heard and accepted these joint resolutions, and if these pass through the legislature in the next term, then in November of 2026 would be the earliest that the voters would decide to eliminate personal property tax. That in one school year would devastate us by $20 million, as the numbers I just showed you in calculation. While other states you think of that may not have personal property tax, they have other ways to offer a revenue stream. There is no information currently that would replace that current revenue stream. So to take that chart that I just showed you to one step further, what I decided to do is to show you with just the Senate Bill 3 effect, so that would be freezing local revenue, and showing you the negative $4 million, $8 million, and $10 million for the next 3 years. At the bottom, you can see how that changes not only the trajectory that I've been showing you, but it would actually take us to 7.43% if I held everything else the same. So all of the other assumptions that you saw on the previous slide stay the same, except for I'm subtracting out those from the revenue line. If I couple that with the year for which the House Joint Resolution could potentially go into effect and take out an additional $20 million, in the year 2029, our fund balance would be at 0.34%. I show this to you so that you can understand, so it can go beyond the words that I've been sharing with you to a visualization and to bring context for how those numbers are calculated. They're all levers, they are all variables, and so we can do this 6 ways to Sunday, they would say, in terms of things that we could think about. But I wanted to show you in a very simplistic approach what that legislation could do to the district. In other news, things that we're working on in the month of September in the areas of human resource, facilities and operations, and finance, technology, transportation, safety and security, and food service. As the first month of school has opened, as you can imagine, we have been very busy making sure that all the people are hired and in the right places. We've been very busy making sure that all of the places of school is up and going, and then in addition to that, the facility master plan and demographic study that will be shared with you this evening, the state setting of the tax levy, working on the current budget, continuing to work with the auditors as they finalize the current or the previous school year's information. We'll be bringing forward a 5-year technology plan as this school year unfolds so that you can see a vision for what that looks like. Transportation has been reviewing route efficiency so that we are in line with some decisions that were made a few years ago in terms of improving that rate. Our safety and security folks are working on a visitor management system and vetting that through the process for both security as well as a stakeholder group. And our food service is looking at improving some of the equipment that they have, that's the point of sale technology that they have in each of our cafeterias. I won't read each of those, but in October and November, we're going to be busy also. With that, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Board.
Thanks for that. I know you said that we haven't had any news on revenue replacement should this legislation go into effect. Obviously, this is a big concern for all Missouri public schools.
Correct.
A shocking concern. So I just thank you for calling that out, and I would appreciate, I think, each month as we are tracking this, I would also just encourage everyone in the district to pay attention to what's happening, because this will be catastrophic for our public school systems across the state.
Absolutely will.
Amy, not having lived in a state without personal property taxes ever, if they do go forward with this, you mentioned some other sources of revenue. What do the other states that don't have personal property tax do?
Of course, there's a variety of things.
Toll
Other
roads
districts
and stuff?
count students even different. So Missouri is one of the only states that counts students by the minute, that become hours, that become the attendance percentage. You're seeing that change this year through the year 2030, where it's going to become both attendance and membership. So you're starting to see a little bit of that. I didn't go into it, but we're also in the middle of a modernization of the Missouri Task Force, or Missouri State Formula, and the governor has pulled together a group of people to redo that formula. It's 20 years old, and so we expect that that might have some redistricting and some, in terms of the way that they're being able to pull together the legislators. And so there's so many variables in play right now, it's really hard to kind of pick one and decide what we want to talk about. So that's why I went this approach to say this is what would happen if all of these things came to fruition. So
Without any sort of
without any
future
change.
plans for
Correct.
replacement of those funds.
And so the first thing you think of is the bottom half of that chart has to do something different. The revenues, if they're going to plummet, so would have to be the expenditures. And so that's when, as we build this next budget, we'll have to really think about the unknowns that are out there. So the first piece of will happen in April of 2026. That's the first, that's Senate Bill 3. And then should the legislator continue on with those House resolutions, that would be in November of 2026. So all within the year of 2026, we should have some known answers. That doesn't give us more money potentially, but it just gives us the answers in order to work around.
I'd like to address Director Ponder. After having lived in other states, the way that they do it if they don't have personal property is typically they have very high real estate taxes. I've been in states where they didn't charge any tax on food, nor did they have property tax, but you had to buy a little house there. And I think the issue here is, and to you, Amy, is the challenge of trying to find places in advance that we might think that either we can do without or we can cut back on. But in the meantime, I think this comes as a double whammy. I'm having a hard time believing that our legislature would hit us this hard, this fast, with this much money. That's just my... And
I agree.
I intend to let them know that.
I agree.
Me too.
Ditto.
Any other questions? Or
I think we ought to wait and see what the plan is. There's obviously a plan that we're not aware of, so hopefully. So I would just say, let's just take a step back before we say the world is coming to an end. Let's see how the policy.
My
works out.
disclaimer when I started was this is what I know.
Right, exactly.
So I'm starting with that. If we know more, please share more. This is what I know, and I'm just showing how it affects the budget that we live under.
for our ability to lead the district as the board, are you aware of any rumblings of anything else that's Ron Harmon might be referring to?
I definitely do not know.
Okay, gotcha.
The cards are on the table.
I'm just saying that, all I'm saying is we have
I was like,
half a picture.
Oh, I know. I just
don't
was
know if they're half
wondering,
the
you know,
picture.
I'm looking for some good news today, Rod. I can use some good news about this, and it doesn't look like good news. Can you turn back to slide 8, please? And, you know, this is going to be a longer board meeting. There's a lot of really important things we're discussing. This is if just Senate Bill 3 comes in, and if you notice, the fund balance percentage drops all the way to 7.43% earlier than we had planned. And then you start discussing how do you prevent that? And one of the things you do is you discuss either raising revenue in other ways, which I know there's people here who may have strong opinions about that, and the other way of preventing that is you make cuts. And some of the cuts would have to be very, very painful in order to balance out $20 million of lost revenue for that 1 year. And I share this because you've done such a great job of bringing this up on a monthly basis. And the district and administration, you are limited to a informational position on this, right?
Correct.
And I appreciate you giving us the information. Other information would be that Senate Bill 3 is scheduled to be on the April 7th ballot, I believe. And it is a county-wide vote, and so it's not just Francis Howell, but it's
Correct.
the entire county would vote on Senate Bill 3. And I would imagine other school districts are sharing similar information as well. This is not a Francis Howell situation. This is all of us together.
It's all the taxing entities, actually. So
And
it's
so
ambulance, fire.
Right, and so if you could ask,
Libraries.
so not just public schools, but it also includes libraries, fire, ambulance, roads, other cities, resource boards, correct?
Correct.
And so this is not just the school saying, this is dangerous to us. This would impact the entire county in ways that are very dangerous to the things that we like about living in St. Charles County, is how I'm viewing this. So part of it, these are questions, right? One of the questions is, what are the other ways that this information is being shared with the public, and how does other people, besides watching us on YouTube right now and looking at slide 8 or slide 9 at the other House pieces pass, how do people access this information beyond just this setting?
Thanks for asking. Jen, Jules, and I will be beginning on next Tuesday, the 30th, well, a week from Tuesday, the 30th. We'll start the Citizens in Our School, the third version, and it's focused on finance. So it's really just a campaign to ensure that anyone in the community that wants to know more about how school funding works, we will go in depth with that information. And so we will be sharing those facts and figures, and the fiscal effect is what this is called. So the fiscal effect of any legislation that's coming, because probably there will be more, as I just mentioned. This one just crept up last week, and knowing that we didn't see it coming, I would imagine that there will be others. So with each of those, I will show you the fiscal effect and what that looks like, as well as breaking down each one of those categories to better understand both the revenues and expenditures for the school district.
I'm also aware that while the administration is limited in what they can say, purely informational, the board has opportunities to speak more persuasively and share their opinions. And the board will have a conversation amongst each other about what does it look like for us to voice those opinions in ways that help out the district. Because we're responsible for every single of the 16,500 students and all the teachers, all the staff, and that's our first obligation. So we'll talk amongst ourselves about what we can do as well.
Okay.
Any other questions, board?
Do we have a schedule or a plan for community outreach, town halls?
That's what Jen, Jules, and I will be working on. Do you want to speak to it, Jen?
Yeah, kind of and I sent you guys an email today, you probably haven't had a chance to read yet, but our first step is really engaging with that group on the 30th, and part of what we want to do with that group, we have 2 classes of Citizens alumni who've already graduated. They're going to help co-create that, really an informational campaign, but what Amy and I have talked about is running it very similar to a bond or levy campaign. We know it's countywide, but we've got to get information to our PTOs, our parent groups, our chambers, our Rotaries, so all of that is coming. Early on, we weren't sure if this was going to be a November ballot issue or April. We now know it's April. Not to say we need to wait until April, but it gave us a little more time to understand these new things coming through and know that there's a bigger story. And as Dr. St. John mentioned, there's new facts coming all the time. So that first step will be that September 30 group, and then we will have some other public sessions that anyone will be invited to get spun up on what does this all mean. So more coming soon, and we'll certainly make sure that anyone who wants to help inform will have factual information from the district that they can share out, and that will include social media posts, flyers, all those sorts of materials will be provided.
Other questions, board?
Has anybody reached out to any of our local legislators to discuss this? Do we have any feedback from local legislators?
Do you want to answer?
We have some tentative meetings set up with some of our local legislators here in the next few weeks that will begin to engage in that conversation and share with them our thoughts and how it impacts us. And some of the communication that we've received from some of those local legislators is always about what can we do to help public schools, and we hope to share that message that these things really impact us in a way that I don't know that they know fully, and we hope to educate them as well.
Thank you.
So part of that discussion, I'm sure you'll be talking about is what is your plan to replace the revenue that you're taking from us?
Yes, that is correct.
Might be the first question, actually.
That'd be.
Any other questions? I want to say again, thank you for the time you spend to not just make it transparent, but make it understandable. And I think that's a special gift, and I appreciate you making the picture understandable for all of us. So thank you very much. All those in favor say aye. Sorry, not about her favorability, but regarding your presentation, regarding the report. All those in favor of approving the report say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Motion passes. Board, I have a motion to approve the purchases as presented.
So moved.
Director Pushkar? Director Ponder? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. Motion passes. Board, I have a motion to approve Dakin TMI through utilization of the interlocal purchasing system job order contract 200-303 to provide labor, equipment, materials, automation, and necessary supplemental scopes of work to perform the demolition and installation of mechanical equipment, including controls at Cosley Elementary, Central Elementary, Daniel Boone Elementary, Francis Howell Central High, Sager Middle, and Warren Elementary for a total cost of $22,816,261 as presented. Purchase is compliant with Missouri statute and board policy.
So moved.
Motion, Director Pushkar, second by Director Ponder. Executive Director, Facilities and Operations, Saloon Stutzer, will be presenting.
Okay. Well, this will be short, but good evening, Board. And so before you for consideration and your approval this evening is the recommendation for Phase 2 HVAC improvements at 6 sites: Cosley, Central Elementary, Daniel Boone, Francis Howell Central, Sager Middle, and Warren. This phase of work was approved during the March 14th, 2024 work session, where the board and the administration worked together to prioritize the remaining bond funds and how they were going to be utilized. So just as a reminder, just through good stewardship of the projects that we brought forward before the board, we were able to bring some of those projects under budget, and we were able to add Sager, if you recall, going back into the fold, if you will, in terms of scope. So that was a positive there. So pending your approval this evening, the work would commence at the conclusion of the academic school year with substantial completion around July 31st of 2026. Just an additional note to share, I think I've articulated everything in the actual memo itself in terms of cost, and we explored different delivery methods for this work and ultimately ended up going the cooperative route because it was the most advantageous for the district. One additional note that I did not include in there is we're working with our utility provider, and with these improvements, we're currently tracking kind of a rebate check back to the district somewhere in the neighborhood of between $500,000 and $700,000. And those numbers obviously can't be finalized until the utility provider has the opportunity to inspect the work. There's certain requirements that we have to meet before they would approve the rebate there. The other big outcome of this, and we won't realize it until probably a full year of service of the new equipment, not just Phase 2, but also Phase 1, is we anticipate a pretty good decrease in our overall energy expenditure with these improvements. We have equipment that's obviously newer. If you recall, in Phase 1, we had systems that were on average about 29 to 32 years old. And in this phase, our average life cycle these systems have been in service about 25 years. So we'll gain some efficiencies there just through new technology, controls. Many of our buildings currently run wide open. So when school's in session, they're running, and when school's not in session, they're running. And so with controls, being able to control that for utility efficiency in unoccupied and occupied settings, it's going to reduce our overall utility expenditures. So with that, all these improvements also align specifically with Pillar 3 of the strategic plan as we find opportunities to better align our expenditures by controlling costs within the district. So be happy to answer any questions the board may have.
How did you manage to get the price down with tariffs going up?
Well, that's the beauty about cooperative purchasing. When we shared that a lot of the components in phase 2 are sourced here in the United States. There are some ebbs and flows from some material suppliers, but overall nothing too significant. As you see in the memo, the cost is higher than what we were anticipated, but that's really driven by the labor market. I think a lot of the trades received hourly salary increases, and so that drove up cost. The schedule, you guys often hear me say the number of days that we actually have from the conclusion of the school year to when school opens again, and it's a condensed schedule where we don't have the luxury of a lot of other work that takes place in the private sector in terms of scheduling. And then the biggest piece, the other big piece is this phase, the application that is, from a mechanical standpoint, a lot of more rooftop units. And so what that really entails is there's some regulatory requirements that we have to comply with introducing more outside fresh air. Means bigger units, means heavier units, which requires structural reinforcements of the roof systems to be able to carry that weight load. So naturally, when you start talking about reinforcements and steel costs and the labor that is involved in completing that work, cost goes up. So those are the primary factors, but to answer your question, we also did have some price protection through the cooperative purchasing tips, and many of the items are sourced here in the United States.
Two things: how many dollars of construction have you overseen?
I haven't had time to sit down.
You told me one time.
Actually calculate it, but just professionally here in just in the district, obviously you're well aware of what we brought to the board from a recommendation standpoint. When we had that work session, roughly then was about $80 million, but over the last 6 years, I've probably overseen just shy of $1 billion in construction across my prior experiences.
Speaking of Henderson, I toured that last week, and they previously did not have central air conditioning, which they do now. It was such a wonderful change. I was really happy to be a part of that, and thank you for overseeing it.
I was there today, and obviously we're aware of just a few challenges once we opened, and it's natural when you're talking about dealing with new regulatory requirements from a refrigerant standpoint and fine-tuning sensors. So we certainly appreciate everybody's patience as we've worked through those challenges. But I was actually, I can look at all the buildings that have received improvements and see kind of where temperatures are. And today was a good day.
Thank you. Just a question on the utility efficiency part.
Yeah.
Did I hear that right? Like the buildings are running HVAC and everything 24/7 and not shutting off when buildings are vacated?
That's correct. Good percentage of our district buildings, that is the case, and part of it is obsolescence in the controls that manage those systems. And as part of these recommendations that we've brought, controls are a part of that. So we now have that function to be able to schedule buildings in occupied mode and unoccupied, and provide the necessary conducive instructional environment.
Okay, and those aren't in place yet, but they will be.
Phase 1 that just got completed this summer, that's in place. And so when I was pulling up and just looking at those buildings, I can see many of the buildings going into unoccupied, and phase 2 will be in the same scenario. Simultaneously, just outside of the recommendations that we've brought to the board for approval, we are working with our controls vendor to assess the remaining buildings that obviously still have systems that are still still have useful life and service in them, and trying to find opportunities or at least have a dollar amount in terms of what it would cost to bring those controls to where they're functional with modern day technology.
Are you planning on monitoring the savings that we get from finally having those in operation?
Yes, we track utility expenditures monthly as it is right now, and obviously you need the data set, right? And there's a lot of variables in there in terms of co-curricular, programs and when those operate and all of those other factors. So we'll need probably a good year and a half to be able to have good data in terms of what that final savings looks like.
As someone who comes from a district who already uses this, it's, as a teacher, a little annoying when I come in the summer and it's hot as a cooker. But I also realize that it's a very big cost-saving effort, so I'm super excited to see us hopefully save that money.
Yeah, I'm excited about it as well, but just keep in mind also, there's been a lot of approvals. I think Ameren just received a rate increase from the Public Utility Board that will probably hit many customers here, probably about in the neighborhood of 5 to 6%, and then the natural gas utility provider also was approved for a rate increase, and most are trending. We're anticipating a cost increase in natural gas of about 10%. So while we're doing these things, some of those savings may be tempered with those increases.
Thank you. Board, any other questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed say no. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Board, I have a motion to approve the music insurance renewal. Just a heads up to the people in the audience, music doesn't refer to music, it's just a weird acronym. So Board, I have a motion to approve the music insurance renewal as presented.
So moved.
Dr. Pushkar? Vice President Greider? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. Motion passes. Board, I have a motion to approve the stop loss renewal as presented. Director Pushkar. Director Ponder for the second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. Motion passes. So we have a different agenda item referred to as a discussion agenda item, and we've kind of practiced this a couple months ago. But what we're going to do is set a timer for 15 minutes maximum, and there's two topics. First is facility rentals. The next one has a reference to substitute teaching. And during these 15 minutes, every board member is going to have a chance to speak for the first time. Then every board member will have a chance to speak for the second time. And that will allow common and fair time for each board member. And in this case, each of those discussion items were presented by a particular board member. And in both cases, that board member will begin with the question to administration. So we are on the topic of facility rentals. If you could have a 15-minute timer to begin. The two board members who brought this forward for questions were Director Ponder and Vice President Greider. Would you like to be the one? I know you and I had the first conversation about it. Would you like to ask the questions first?
Yeah, thanks. I think, so Director Ponder and I had kind of discussed this a little bit too, and we're looking as we're facing a number of challenges, I think, in the public schools. For me, one part that I think we have an opportunity with facility rental is community building. And so I would love to have some discussion around what that might look like. Our public schools obviously serve the kids who attend here for district families, but we also have a lot of families that have kids who either go to other schools or kids who are not in school, but thought there might be an opportunity just to kind of help show the value and also kind of show off the facilities that we have here in the district because they're pretty fantastic. And then just also to explore the opportunity just from a revenue perspective too. Is there a way that we can raise some money here just, by leveraging the facilities when they're not in use by our team? So that was just kind of the genesis of the discussion, just kind of some creative thinking about how we can build some community and then also look for other revenue sources. I don't know, Mark, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, that's really what it comes down to is we have these beautiful facilities, take North, for instance, and, I think we have an opportunity to be able to give a little bit of that back to the community by reaching out and saying, hey, if you have an event that you would like to hold, we do have a rental schedule. You have to have obviously all of these things in place, insurance and whatnot, to be able to use it. But we're paying for all of these things, and a lot of times when you have, for instance, Central's baseball/softball field, the turf there, we're paying for it. It's the taxpayers' money, and it sits vacant a lot of time. And so, it gets to a certain point in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, how do we get our full usage out of these facilities while maintaining a level of I guess beauty, or a level of niceness of these facilities, so that we can continue to give back to the community and show these things off. I think Jen and I had a conversation years ago about this now, and it was more so on the monetary side. How much do we charge to rent out a basketball court, tennis courts, baseball field, whatever it is. And at the time, it seemed to me, knowing what a baseball field rents for, that the district was way out of touch with what it should be renting for, which means that no one in their right mind is going to ever rent it, which means it stays vacant and we don't get our full usage out of it. I think Saloon said one time that the turf has a 10-year warranty, Saloon? Something like that. So, it's under warranty. We should be utilizing it as much as we possibly can, while allowing the people that want to use it to understand that there's a responsibility that goes into place when you're on these fields, and in on the basketball court, in the tennis court. So I guess my question would be, how, I don't remember, Jen, or anybody else wants to answer, how is it determined what we rent the fields, tennis courts, basketball courts, whatever, for? How do we determine that?
Okay.
Mark?
I mean, we have a fee rental usage facility schedule that we've developed. So a lot of times we're charging for the use of the facility itself, but we're also charging for labor for people that either have to monitor the facility, clean the facility before and after, and all of those costs are built in. A lot of those times, those costs also involve overtime for those staff members. So part of the unique thing about some of our structures, right, I would say that my perception, and certainly the guy in the back behind me that runs all these facilities could correct some of this, but our gyms are heavily used, right? When you think about conversations we've had regarding feeder basketball programs, a lot of our middle school, elementary gyms are used consistently throughout. We had several years ago a desire to, and I think a belief that we were going to generate a lot of revenue. Some of the problems are that our elementary and middle school facilities, they're not really performance courts when you look at the floors within our gym system. So they're great for practices, but when you go to, and I only know this because my kids would travel, like Parkway, in their middle school structures, they had a lot of performance courts. So kind of a rubberized type gymnasium where you really could have a basketball tournament there that took place that could be competitive and have that game played and generate revenue. Our really performance-based areas are really our high schools. And minus like what you talked about, the turf field, our gyms are heavily used at the high school level, and even sometimes some of our like auditoriums and things like that are utilized as well. But the fee structure comes from determining what we feel like the facility itself should rent for, and then there's additional fees for the employees that have to help cover. I don't know if the gentleman behind me wants to step up and add anything, or Amy, if you want to add anything to that as well.
Saloom, is there anything you would like to add? If there's an interest, no, you don't have to add.
Just a
but maybe at least be available.
Yeah, so it's a really great topic, and I think many school systems in the state struggle with it, right? As they, try to find opportunities on how to generate revenue. What I can tell you just from lived experiences, even in my prior system, we lost money on facility rentals. And the reality of it is, in order to really generate revenue, I mean, our overall staffing framework in public education is really to support instruction. I think we all know and understand that. And so when you start talking about, I'll just pick on custodial, right? Because that's the one that really carries, lets folks in, cleans up after, provides service, when things aren't going well on that facility rental. And that's on top of, in our school system, they clean. Their primary responsibility is to clean. The end of the day, restore the instructional space. That way, it's ready for students and staff and other educational stakeholders the next day. So, in order for a strategic revenue model to really be successful, we would need to add FTEs to be able to support that additional load, because if we start pulling them away to provide the necessary support for all this influx of programs that are renting our facilities, it's pulling them away from cleaning their nightly, on average about 26,000 square feet per FTE, and then we start declining in terms of the level of service and quality that we're providing for our educational stakeholders. And so the big thing too that I think also for the board to consider is we're moving our own programs on a pretty consistent basis. While baseball at Francis Howell Central they might be away, and we end up having rain at Howell High or Howell North, who don't have turf fields. And as long as it's not lightning, we can get them over to Francis Howell Central. So there's a lot of programs, and I just use that example because it happens frequently. But same thing happens with our gyms. We're consistently moving programs around, and obviously our obligation, obviously, to our community and our taxpayers is always take care of ours first, and because that's our responsibility. And so naturally, what ends up happening in that particular scenario through lived experiences is we bump rentals. And so now you have disgruntled outside folks that well, we had a reservation. Yeah, fine print. You get bumped if we need the space. And so naturally you end up creating this vacuum of, well, we're not even going to explore that anymore, partly because we need to be able to have solid commitments and communication for whatever program is renting the facility to those stakeholders, parents and grandparents. So,
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Other board members, any questions? I want to make sure you all have an equal opportunity to share.
Yeah, I do. I love this idea because it feels to me like it, without knowing all the logistics and everything, it just feels to me like it's a solution to some possible revenue, but also community building opportunities for us as well. Is there a place where, and this I don't know, where we can see the data for the?
Yeah, and I had actually asked Ms. Sarah Vanderpool to pull all that data, and we can certainly get that to you. We've got 2 years worth, and I didn't get a chance to look at it in depth before, so I'm not going to share anything, but we can certainly get that to you. You can see what our revenue and our bookings were and what our expenditures, not including utilities, what those came in at for 23-24, actually 22-23 and 23-24.
Also, something too, I don't know if that includes the theaters and things too, because I know we talked mostly about sports and things too, but also thinking about that as a...
It would include data for any outside facility rental group for those fiscal years.
Is there a schedule somewhere where you can see everything that's available and when it's not?
So we use a third-party platform called Facilitron, and that's where third-party groups that want to utilize district facilities when they're not being utilized by the district go, and everything is done on their payments, insurance submission. You can see the availability in terms of what facilities are available.
Are there any other board members want to have a first question? Anybody else? All right, you've got two questions. Amy, Mark, do you have a second question?
Yeah, I guess my idea is twofold. Obviously, one, give back to the community that's given so much to us. Let them enjoy the facilities that they obviously paid for. But then also the pricing structure. You're 100% right. There are, baseball teams leave things in the dugout. There's a lot of cleanup. You have to make sure that they're not spitting sunflower seeds on the turf, things like that, light usage, all kinds of different things. So there is a cost there. What I would say is, again, knowing what those fields typically rent for instance, Carshield Field or St. Louis University or GCS, these are basically either Division I or professional stadiums. From what I remember, the cost of renting who again would also have the same cleanup, the same payments to the people that would clean up. I remember it being the discrepancy between the cost of any Francis Howell facility and the cost of professional facilities like that being so far out of whack it wasn't even worth looking at. So that's one thing that I would advise is maybe take it, and I would imagine that you probably looked at other districts. You didn't look at Carshield Field because why would you? But looking at Zumwalt, yes, that's great. See what they pay or see what they charge, but also look at Blanchette, look at Carshield, look at all the CNH, look at all the fields in our area and see what the average is, so that maybe we can have a shot at doing this. And yes, include all of those things in there because they do as well. But I do think that there's an opportunity to give back to the public that has given us so much, while also generating a little bit of revenue for us. And just, like I said, if it comes to nothing, then it comes to nothing. But simply looking into it a little bit deeper I would suggest that, because I think it is something that would be that the community would be grateful to be able to use these things that they pay for.
Yeah, no, absolutely, 100%. So, what I think we can commit to is let's get you the data of the last 2 years in terms of what that looks like, and just see what the delta was between what we expensed, not including utilities, and then what we generated in revenue from those bookings. And then I think we can begin kind of looking into doing an analysis, whether it's a comparable study with school systems and maybe some outliers such as what you mentioned, and then bring back some just information, not even necessarily a recommendation for the board to consider. So we can commit to that.
Okay, appreciate it. Well, we are out of our 15 minutes. Any question that a board member has, Director Oki and others, feel free to send an email to myself, Mark Delaney, and Saloom Stutzer with additional questions for follow-up. Thank you so much. Our second discussion item relates to substitute teaching. Again, this item will have 15 minutes, and hold off to hit start until I describe what's going on. In this case, the person who brought it up was Director Oki. And so Director Oki, I would like to also direct everybody in the audience, those watching online, there's a significant amount of questions and answers provided in the content here. Go ahead and look through that while this is also going on. So my Director Oki, since you initiated this topic for this space, for you to go ahead and ask your first question to administration, then afterwards I'll make sure everyone gets a first try before I give everybody a second try.
Did you want me to just ask a question, or did you want me to explain why I brought it?
However you want to use your time.
Oh, okay. So the substitute teaching is definitely a concern within the school district, because what we are hearing is that there are several times that we do not have substitutes that are filling the jobs within the schools. When we don't have a substitute teacher coming in and taking the jobs, and we have those extra jobs where there's no placement, oftentimes we have situations where other people within the building need to step in and help. This can happen a couple different ways, but one of the ways that was concerning from my perspective as a teacher myself was the practice of funneling. And this is what's this is what kind of really piqued my concern about asking these questions, which was in a typical scenario where funneling is used, and this is not a term that is like everywhere. It's something that is really kind of only used here in Francis Howell, but a teacher would make a plan for her students of her classroom or his, and then if they were absent and the job was not filled, those students would be, the word is funneled, 2 or 3 out to other teachers within the building. So what we would be seeing is that all the other teachers that were there would take on an additional 2 or 3 or more children in addition to their regular rosters. For me, as a teacher, I've done this many times in my capacity to help out a teammate, but I don't feel this is a scalable, long-term, or equitable solution. And I wanted to explore what can we learn, what can we do, what can we try to understand about how to definitely mitigate this in some way, shape, or form, especially at the elementary school level, considering that these are students who, are accustomed to their cubby holes and their hooks and their desks with their names on them and all of their things in there, only to find out like that morning that they have to go and break the classroom apart into multiple pieces and be somewhere else for the day. So with that concern in mind, I asked a lot of questions about how does the district do substitute, the substituting process, and how that is how that's being utilized. And so with that, we got a lot of answers back from the district. One question that I do still have is how, is there a software program like Frontline or ASAP that's being used to keep track and manage getting our substitutes out, or is that still in that substitute pool, is that still something that's maintained in-house? And has the district ever considered outsourcing substitutes like my district, Parkway, does? We use Kelly Services. And that gives us a much larger pool. And Kelly handles a lot of the training and things like that. And we don't see the same level of jobs being unfilled. Questions?
I can answer that very quickly. We do provide our substitute services in-house, so we have not used a third-party provider like Kelly Services. We did talk with them and do that research several years ago when we started to see the pool of substitute teachers dwindle a little bit. What we found is that they would ask us, how much are you paying your substitute teachers? At that time, it was maybe $95 a day. They were going to charge us $130 a day for them to do the same service that we provided. We felt like keeping that in-house. If we were going to pay a third-party provider that rate of pay, we could look at utilizing that and paying that to our own substitutes. So that was one of the strategies that we utilized. We increased our rate of pay for our substitutes. We do utilize Frontline Central. That's an online system. It's absence management that allows substitutes to go in and look at the jobs that are open and take those jobs electronically. So they're not waiting for those old 5 o'clock in the morning phone calls to pick up their jobs. And that's been helpful because they can look in advance and they can see in advance when those positions are available. There's also a con to that in that our substitutes are now accustomed to being able to schedule themselves for work. So when you get those very last minute absences that are put into the system, a lot of the times our substitutes might not be looking for that. They like to have that opportunity to schedule their own daycare or make sure that they can kind of have that schedule in advance. We really started looking at the no-fill situation in the 2015-2016 school year when we started to see maybe 1 or 2 no-fills on average a day. And over the course of several years, we saw as high as 17 no-fills a day, and really started to look at how we were recruiting substitutes, kind of what the profile of a substitute was, why there was a substitute teacher shortage, and did a lot of that research to try to respond to that. And I would say over all of those years, our efforts are really working. In the 24-25 school year, we were able to fill 92%, almost 93% of our positions with our own substitutes. And when we did the research of Kelly Services and other agencies, they couldn't provide any higher of a fill rate than what we were filling internally ourselves. And we were able to keep those dollars and those resources to our own substitutes. So that has definitely been helpful. So I think that answers your two biggest questions there.
Great. Board members, any other, with that first question?
Not about the question, I have a comment.
That's okay.
Okay, thank you. I think I agree that this is a troubling situation and wish that it never happened. Fortunately, sometimes it does. However, there was a patron that was here, I think he's here tonight actually, that brought up a topic about looking at why are the teachers absent so much, and maybe mitigating some of that by offering pay for sick days. I'm not real sure what the criteria is now for being paid for a sick day. I guess it's when you leave, is that? Okay, so maybe we need to look at that and bounce that against how much these absences are causing us and come to a more economic solution for that. And I thank Mr. Surrey for bringing that forward a couple months ago, I think it was.
Ms. Pushkar, we have looked at, you said two things, I gotta remember my train of thought here. So one is like a teacher attendance incentive. We had a lot of conversation around that, and we can start to look into that just a little bit more. Our reimbursement process is when you retire. And so right now it's $75 per day up to 75 days when you retire. And then if you have 90 to 100 days in your bank, then you receive an additional $1,000. But that benefit is 30 years later from when you start. And I think just different generations are different and they like to see that immediate feedback. So it is part of our strategic plan. If you look at our, in the people and leadership pillar, we do have a strategy to look at teacher attendance and how do we look at the reimbursement and leave policies that might help people kind of look at that differently as not just, if I'm not going to be paid for that time, I'm going to use it because it is my benefit, and kind of changing that and seeing if there's something different that we can do. So that's part of the strategic plan and part of the strategy that we'll look at. Okay, thank you for sharing that.
Any other board members have a first comment? So just really briefly for me, can you speak to whether or not funneling is the last resort and what happens before you move to funneling? And along with that was the decision and process to make sure it doesn't impact one school over and over out of proportion to other schools.
Yeah, I think the word funneling might be specific to Francis Howell. I think Parkway uses splitting a classroom, or I think in their closure agreement it says splitting when splitting of a classroom occurs. So I do think it is a last resort or a strategy for many districts across the area. This isn't just a Francis Howell thing. Of course, we first, when a job is open, we ask all of our regular substitute teachers to fill those positions. Next, if we see that a position has gone unfilled, our substitute specialist, the first thing she does every morning at 5:30 is deploy our 17 permanent subs. So what that allows us to do is if there is a significant number of absences in one building, we can funnel those resources or push those resources to that building first. So that will address that. Next, we can start to look at pulling reading teachers, ELL teachers, librarians, administrators, paraprofessionals, and start to fill those vacancies because we know we have to have a qualified body supervising children. That's not always the best option either because then those students aren't getting those specialized services that they need. And then we go into the funneling of that situation. So there is some data in the question and answers that we've shared. I would say our elementary principals say that it is not happening daily. I think last year at Becky David, it happened 10 times. At Harvest Ridge, it happened twice. There is some more funneling that happens when we have teachers that don't have a full day absence, when they're absent maybe for a partial day. We want to provide that flexibility to teachers, so we know that it's better for them to be absent for a couple of hours than a half day or a full day. And so providing that flexibility to our teachers so they don't have to take that full or half day absence means then we might have to do a little funneling as well. So it is not a strategy that we say we're proud of and we're going to use it when it happens, but it is a necessity when we don't have enough adults to cover all of our classrooms.
Any other first comments by any board members? Tamika, we have a question for you. Vice President?
I just thought it would be a good opportunity since we have a student representative here to see if you happen to, when you were in elementary school or in middle school, if you've ever experienced that when you were had a substitute and you had to be taken out of your class and moved to another class, or just if you wanted to make any comments about subs and productivity in general and how those days go.
I think for elementary school, we only had the funneling done like once, and that was probably like in 4th or 5th grade. But the teacher was only gone for half the day. And then in middle school, a lot of the teachers who take off sick days, it's usually planned like 3 or 4 days in advance, so we have subs to fill in. But recently, actually, Wednesday and Thursday this week, my specter teacher, he was gone for like an absence. And he had one of his coworkers during their planned schedule or ISAP time, they came in and subbed for that hour.
Tamika, thank you for sharing that, because that is a big strategy that we use, is to ask teachers to come in and cover an unfilled absence on their plan time, and there is compensation for that. So thanks for that reminder.
Any board members want to make a second comment or question?
I have notes, yeah. I did notice when the data did come in, we were looking at, like across from each school, FMT, is that Fairmount?
Yes, ma'am.
Had a pretty big difference, looking at 28 full days of that versus, other schools having much less. Is there a need in that building that we need to address?
Yeah, I would just remind you that Fairmont is a large elementary school, probably the size of a small middle school. So when you compare Fairmont to a Harvest Ridge or Henderson, there's just 8 or 9 sections of every grade level compared to 4 or 5 of every other grade level. So the opportunity for absences is greater. The need for substitutes is greater. I think Fairmont also has all of the practices and procedures in place to find subs, to pull their administrators and their teachers to fill those absences, and then go to funneling it as a last resort. But we'll definitely check in with them and see. That was a little surprising to us, but we'll make sure that they are supported and have that opportunity to let us know if they need something.
Anybody, other board member have a? So my second thing would just be, could you identify, do you need more substitute teachers, first of all? And if you can continue to think through ideas and options and plans on how to continue to improve this area, and then share them with us in the future?
Sure, we have over 728 active subs, and we hired 58 new substitute teachers since August 1st. So I don't know that it is a recruiting problem or a hiring problem. We interview our substitute teachers as soon as they submit that application. We have an online interview to make it quick and efficient. They're brought in very quickly for weekly orientations, and they're put to work. So yes, we can, and you see the list of all of the different strategies that we have used over the years, because we know that funneling is not the best option. But I think some of the things that we can do is look at how do we help our teachers not feel that burnout so they don't feel like they have to take a sick day. How do we support the attendance of our teachers to have that same expectation that we have for students? And I think all of those things will be happening in our strategic plan and the work that we do.
We have time for one last question, if we can have it done in the next 30 seconds.
Again, is a teacher allowed to say no?
Well, I guess the administrator would have a conversation with that teacher. I think the issue, what I have heard as I have talked with our elementary principals is teachers are sometimes feel that funneling is a better option than pulling the reading teachers and the LE teachers. They work together collaboratively when those things happen. I think what it comes down to is we can't have a classroom of students without an adult in the room. And so depending on the number of absences that have happened that day, if there's some massive flu bug that hits a building and we don't have adults, we have to do something to ensure that there is an adult supervising those children. I think our administrators do an amazing job of talking with our teachers and asking how they're feeling and doing what they can to support those teachers through that.
Thank you for your help, Ms. Simpkins. Board members, if you have additional questions outside this meeting, feel free to email as well. And I want to thank you and as well as Mr. Delaney for helping out with that question. Next, we have Hollis Miller and our demographic analytic advisors, who are here this evening to co-present and provide a facility master plan and demographic study update. Executive Director of Facilities and Operations, Saloom Stutzer, will introduce.
All right, thank you.
Oh, I apologize. First of all, the policies and regulations are being presented for first reading and mandatory updates. They will be brought back for second reading and vote at the October 16th board meeting. Thank you very much, Ms. Hepler. And now to Saloom and Howell Miller.
Thank you. Good evening again, board. This evening, we're pleased to provide you with an update to the facility master plan and demography study. The presentation directly and indirectly touches each pillar of the strategic plan, and we're excited to share an update of the work that's been taken place up to this point. And we look forward to further discussions around priorities during the board work session that'll be scheduled soon. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our partners, Hollis & Miller, Demo Advisors, in collaboration with Cordigan & Clark, who will co-present as they work collaboratively on this presentation.
Okay, I'm much shorter than Saloom. Good evening. Excited to be back in front of you guys for a little bit different content tonight. So we'll go ahead and get going with some introductions, and then we're going to spend a lot of time today talking about the facility master plan process, and then some high-level data that we're starting to uncover. And this is really just the start of this process. There are some other steps that are going to come right after this. So we're excited to start that with you this evening. And then we'll talk a little bit about what those next steps are. So quick introduction, I am Megan Barnes with Hollis & Miller Architects. We are a full-service architectural and design firm, and one of those services that we offer is facility master planning and long-range planning specifically for K-12 education clients. So I have a long history of working with districts proactively to create really good, great plans for moving your facilities and your district forward. So we're excited to be back in front of you and talk about this process a little bit tonight. I've got a few friends that are not here physically with me tonight, but you will see as we go through some of the work sessions coming up this fall and future board meetings. Justin, I know, has been in front of most of you guys before, our partner in charge, and then John Waynick and Kelsey have been doing a lot of our boots on the ground data collection here over the last 6 months, and are excited to get in front of you guys here soon. And then, as Saloom mentioned, we have our friends from Demographic Analytics Advisors. Chris is going to co-present with me tonight, and then his teammates at Cordigan & Clark as well that have been working on this process. Okay, so stepping back just a little bit, talking about what is a facility master plan. I know some of you guys have probably been through these before. Some of you might be new to this process. So what this is really stepping back and making sure that we're taking a proactive view of both your facilities and how you're facilitating education in those buildings throughout the district. Always good to step back and kind of look at that long-term viewpoint so that we can make smart decisions along the way. We see this through a 5-step process, and typically where we start with, and like any other project, is we really want to talk about what the goals are and how we're going to facilitate that process. So earlier this year, we went through that game planning phase and really talked about what the goals were and what the timeline was for this process and how we were going to collect data and move through this process. Our team of about 10 to 15 spent spring break and a good part of the spring walking literally every inch of your guys' buildings, roofs, exterior, interior, spending time really getting to know them and understand what's going on in those buildings. And we're here tonight. We also did some other data collection over the last 3 to 4 months. Going to share that tonight. And then really those next steps are going to be, where do we want to go with that data? Data's great, but what do we do with it? So we're going to talk a little bit about what our priorities are as a district, and then how we can take that and implement that for the long term. So tonight we're going to focus on that data, and how we look at this through a facility master plan is really 3 prongs. We look at that from the education-centric data. So you guys have some amazing educators and administrators that we get that data from them. We do surveys and other ways of getting that data from them. The people-centric data, again, more surveys. We also want to talk about how we're connecting to your strategic plan. You guys have just implemented that, so that's something we want to overlay as well. And then especially that facility-centric data that we've spent a lot of time, as I mentioned, in those buildings, really starting to understand what you're working with and starting with so we can start that process. So the first thing that we did as we talked through that game plan was, how do we want to collect data and what different types of stakeholders do we want to engage? So the first thing we did was we sent out a district-wide survey that hit both administrative level as well as building level staff. And as you can see up here, this was our response rate, which was pretty great. We also were getting kind of towards the end of the year there too, so that may have impacted some of those numbers as well. And we will be providing a summary report of all that information. There's a lot of good data in there, but just wanted to highlight a few things that may impact the master plan as we move on. So starting with district level staff, obviously, first and foremost, everybody when it comes to facility safety and security is always at the forefront. So continuing to maintain and improve upon that as things change in the ever evolving world. Communication and staff input was one that got brought up in terms of continuing to improve on that. And then staff support and retention, obviously important as well there from some of the conversations this evening. And then as we go to building level staff, technology, deferred maintenance, and then enrollment and growth were some of the really hot points that came out of that. What we're going to talk a lot about tonight in terms of maintenance, maintaining facilities, and then also right-sizing buildings and understanding what that means for the district. So that next step after we get kind of that high-level survey data and get that from your educators in the district was really that boots on the ground effort. And so after this we're going to be pretty high level tonight because you guys have a lot of buildings and it's a lot of data to share. But after this, we're going to share out this report for future work sessions. That's about 5 pages for each building, and that's actually pretty summarized. We've got lots of spreadsheets and additional photos, detailed information as backup that will come with that report as well. Some pretty long appendixes also with all that survey data. But what you're going to see is a pretty succinct report for each building. It's going to have the general building information. The age of it's obviously important to understand what we need to do from a maintenance standpoint. It's going to show some photos for context. It's going to also then show a facility score. And so this, we'll talk about this here in a second, but this is relative to the other buildings in the district, and it gives us just a starting point to talk about what some of those needs are short and long term. And then the other piece is we're going to talk about today is that capacity of the building, understanding both the data and also how buildings are feeling from a capacity standpoint. The second page of that report is going to have, you're going to see a lot of red, yellow, green here, and what that really does indicate is things green that are in pretty good shape. Yellow might be a little bit of a warning of what are we looking at in the next 3 to 5, 5 to 10 years, so we can start again to proactively plan for needs that are come. Just like anybody's personal budgets, homes, cars, things like that, over time, they need to be maintained, even if you take really, really good care of them. So that's some of the thing we talk about is that the more that we can plan ahead, obviously with the number of buildings you guys have, if things start to get to the same age at the same time, that can add up to be a lot of things. So if we can look at how we balance improvements over time, that can help with some of that budget management versus having to kind of just wait and see when they're needed. We can plan proactively for that. I'm gonna go back really quick. One thing to note here too is we did do these reports in this past spring. So some of this data is starting to actually get to be 4, 5, 6 months past where we're at today. So as you can see up here, this is an example of Francis Howell High, and the little box on the left there, those observed needs. The really awesome thing is some of these things have already actually been taken care of since we did the assessments this spring. For example, Francis Howell High has gotten a very large paving asphalt project, concrete repairs there. That was on that list. So there are some things that are happening from a capital standpoint or some of the remaining bond dollars from the last bond that are on these lists that have already been taken care of because of some of that planning in the past. So that's a good news that those things are starting to fall off the list already. And then finally, there's going to be photos in there. So, lists are great, but actually getting some of those visuals to see pretty quickly what some of those things are that may need to be maintained or updated in the future. As I mentioned, there's also going to be a building score on there. And what we do is we have 6 categories here that talk about everything from the building site to educational appropriateness, mechanical systems, lighting, plumbing, all those kind of things, roofs, windows, is there masonry, those kind of things. So it does go through and pretty incrementally score those buildings on a number of categories. As I mentioned, these are just the summaries. There's a lot of detail behind those that we'll obviously provide as we go through that. And then finally, that one thing on the report that we're going to talk about probably most tonight is that about evaluating and defining capacity. This is often a question that comes up of how many kids can we fit in a building? And there's a lot of ways to look at that, and so we'll talk about that here in a second because there's both the data of how many kids you can physically fit in a building from a code perspective or from an educational appropriateness standpoint, but there's also other factors, scheduling, staffing, specialized programs, If you have more equipment, obviously you can fit less kids in a room. So it truly is a balance that you have to look at and understand the numbers, but then also the feeling of how staff and students are truly feeling in that building that you need to overlay on that data. So to talk about how we define capacity, again, there's a lot of ways you can say there's 25, 30 kids in every single classroom and fill up the entire building. But we step that back a little bit and we do add some additional layers on there just to account for, obviously when you have a kindergarten class come in, it's not 25 kids in every single class. The first grade class is not 25. It just doesn't work out. Kids aren't born, unfortunately, in little packets of 25 kids. So we do have to factor that in. Elementary and middle schools, we typically look at in a couple different ways. So I won't go through all of this up here, but I did want to provide kind of that backup. If there are questions, we can talk about that, of how we define that. But kind of the short and long of it is, from an elementary standpoint, we don't include specials like music, art, a gym, because kids move in a cohort as a group to those classes. Whereas as a middle school and high school, kids are moving, they have their individual schedule and they move separately. So you're able to schedule a building a little bit different. So those are kind of the major differences here. And then the three different ways that we layer is that design capacity. As designers, you build a space or a classroom, a certain number of square foot for a kid. That's a starting place. Again, that's not always the final answer. We also look at observed capacity. If you have a square room, you can fit kids in there more efficiently. If it's got some angles, different shapes, things like that, that also reduces the capacity of the space. And then also that desired standard capacity. So obviously, as a district, state requirements, there are some caps and different ideal and targets, and then also maximum capacity from a teaching and learning standpoint. So we do utilize those numbers that you guys provide in the state as well to balance all of that there. And then finally, again, as I mentioned, since kids aren't in perfect little packages of 25 or 30 kids, we do add a functional capacity factor on there to make sure that if we have a bubble year or things like that, that we're not overfilling a building at the front there. So you got a little space there. And then the major difference when we get to middle and high school is we are counting those special spaces. So you do get to utilize a little bit more of the building just because of how you're scheduling it. Lots of numbers. So I know you guys have heard a lot of numbers tonight. So, okay. So how do we use this capacity information? This is really the big question here. And so this is what we do to take a utilization factor of the building. So the ideal or target, and again, this is a general recommendation. This is not always the final answer. So as we move through the planning priorities phase next, this is something we'll talk about a lot, is this the right target for your district? And sometimes we do end up adjusting it because of different factors. So that's something we'll want some additional input on as we move through that process. But typically we say that 75 to 90% utilization of a building is kind of that sweet spot, so that you're not staffing a building that has too few kids in it, and you're not busting at the seams where you don't have that flexibility of scheduling and you're being forced into decisions to get kids into spaces appropriately. Typically what we would say is under capacity or underutilized is under that 75% target. Again, there's some flexibility there. Again, specialized programs, if you have more unique needs or things where we got to reduce the student to teacher ratio, that would fall under that case. And then nearing capacity is typically that 90 to 99%. That's where it's kind of that warning of, let's keep monitoring this, make sure that we don't get into a position where we're too full. And again, sometimes that might correct itself, but that's just kind of that wait and see, or start to plan possibly for a correction to that. And then finally, anything over 100% would be noted as over capacity, and at that point would want to evaluate options for adjustments to correct that. And then finally, the last piece here is, so what do we do with that? Even if we know if a building is appropriately utilized, underutilized, or overutilized, what do we do with that information? So next, Chris is going to talk a little bit about how we overlay projections. So obviously, utilization may be somewhere today, but we really need to understand where it's going, because if it's going to correct itself in a year, maybe not a concern. So he's going to talk a little bit about how we get that information to understand what projections are saying, and then we'll come back to this here in a few minutes.
Actually, one moment. Tamika, would you like to continue to stay for the rest of this presentation and the next presentation, or do you need to go home because you have school tomorrow and stuff? Wait. You have no school tomorrow.
But still.
Oh,
No pressure.
No pressure. Would you like to stay longer,
This
or
is a particularly long meeting, so we just want to, give the option.
what would you like?
As much as I love staying here with you guys,
Oh.
and as much as I love the opportunities you guys have given me today, I would love to go home.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So thank you for pausing. Tamika, thank you so much.
Yeah.
That's good. It's a great job setting boundaries. Every adult in this room can do a better job setting boundaries as well as Tamika. Thank you. Thank you for leading us so much, Tamika. Thank you for the pause.
Thank you, Tamika.
Thank you.
We're so proud of you. Thank you so much. Okay. Thank you for allowing us to have that.
Of course, of course. All right, well, thank you all for having me. You're going to miss out on some really fun math. So I'm Chris Dick. I run a company called Demographic Analytics Advisors. Here with me today is Steve Raskin from Gordon & Clark Architects. And I want to talk to you a little bit about some enrollment forecasts that we built. So, as we were talking about, really what we're trying to do here is understand where your enrollment is going by school, by grade, into the future. And really what we're trying to do is look 10 years into the future. So our goal here was to develop reasonable enrollment forecasts that take into account a few different things. Building development, any COVID-19 declines and rebounds that occurred, because we want to kind of forecast that out as a one-time event. Any changes in market share, and when I talk about market share, I'm talking about changes in the share between public and other forms of education, and then historical enrollment patterns. But before I get into that, I really want to talk about what is an enrollment forecast and what isn't it, what isn't it. And this is always something I've had to do doing this type of work. I used to actually run the area at the U.S. Census Bureau that does population forecasting. And this was always something we had to talk to folks as well, because we were doing 50-year forecasts then. And what an enrollment forecast or population forecast is a scientific most likely scenario based on all of our inputs. It's an extremely useful planning tool if used correctly and questioned by either folks at the district, our friends, our architects who are doing facility studies, or by you as the board. What isn't it? It's not a magic solution that's going to tell us to the exact student what your enrollment is going to be in 10 years. If anyone tells you they can do that, they're lying to you. But it is also not a random and wild guess at what enrollment will be in 10 years. We're using all of your local knowledge as well as our kind of scientific techniques to come up with what the most likely number will be. So what are some of the key considerations that we're bringing in here? As we talked about, we're looking at historical enrollment patterns, we're looking at your school capacities and attendance zones. Then we're starting to get into the kind of meat and potatoes of what we do. We look at demographic processes, births, migration, age, sex, race, and Hispanic origin trends, as well as the built environment. We're looking at building permits, developments that are going on. We talk to the county, we talk to all your municipalities to understand what developments are in the pipeline. We also look at economics, as I mentioned, COVID-19, and those market share changes. So I'm a definite bottom line up front guy, so I just want to kind of get to it, and then I'll walk you through how we got there. Our summary of findings. St. Charles County overall, as well as your school district, are expected to continue growing if we're talking about overall population. Not enrollment here, but overall population. The number of housing units and households also continues to increase steadily, or slowly. However, like the rest of the county, state, and the country as a whole, the population within the boundaries of your school district continue to age. And additionally, fertility rates continue their decline post-2008. Everyone knows 2008 we had a recession. When you have a recession, often fertility rates go down. They have continued to go down post-2008. And in fact, the National Center for Health Statistics reported that just about a month ago that 2024 had the lowest fertility rate of all time in the United States. Not of the last decade, not of the last 20 years, of all time. So the takeaway here is that population and housing growth are positive for you all. It's going to offset, some of that population growth is going to be offset by aging and declining fertility. Some growth will occur in parts of the district and decline will occur in other parts of the district. Overall, over about the first 5 years of our projection period, we're seeing a slight growth and then a slight decline after that. So in 10 years, we're really seeing about a 1% decline for the district as a whole in enrollment. And this is just showing that. And I know people like to look at both charts as well as numbers. This is kind of showing what that looks like over the next 10 years. So for the first 5 years, you can see kind of that slight bump up and then a slight decline. So what does this look like by program? I know these are a ton of numbers and kind of small, but I know you all can also download the document. But what I'm really trying to show here is that we do have some schools that are growing substantially. and that's something that we need to be thinking about. But we also have some schools that are declining, and that's going to be a big part of that facilities planning process. I also love to look at this in maps because I love maps. I'm a huge nerd. And really what we're looking at here is the change from your 2024-25 enrollment year over year for 2026, 28, 30, and 34. And again, you can see here, these are our elementary schools to start. Anything in green is where you're increasing, red is decreasing. So you can see kind of those pockets of growth for elementary school that then should flow through over time to middle and high school. We look at our middle school forecasts, and some of this is some of the smaller cohorts that we were seeing in elementary school a few years ago are now aging into middle school. We see some of those declines, and then over time that actually increases at the end of the forecast period. And then finally, we have the same information on high schools. So how did we get there? We use something we call a modified grade progression methodology. So basically, if you've ever seen a demographic study before, it's kind of a cohort methodology. Basically, what we're looking at is we're analyzing for a school how many students, for example, were in kindergarten last year. What is the ratio of students who are in first grade this year? You take those two numbers, you divide them. If you have a number over 1, you have more students in first grade than you had in kindergarten last year. People are moving in. If it's under 1, you're losing kids. And so that's really what we're trying to forecast is that number. When I say we're modifying that by looking at your building developments as well. So we're also taking into account any of those developments that are happening, looking at the yield of students for those developments and adding that into the process. So we tested several different weighting regimes and finalized a 10-year weighted average with weighting skewed slightly more towards recent data and took out some of the COVID-19 kind of bumps down as well as bumps back up. We also added in housing-based growth by attendance zone, minus any of the units that were clearly going to be 55 plus communities, so if we could find that information. We then compared those issues and added in those additional students based on the housing growth. But we also didn't assume that every single development that is planned would actually occur. I don't want you, basically what I'm trying to say, this was a relatively conservative estimate. So housing growth we assumed will occur kind of at the following rates. 75% of all approved housing will be built out over the period. 25% of proposed housing would be built out over that same period. And then occupancy rates, so the number of those new houses that are actually occupied, and persons per household by age, so that's basically your student yield, would follow historical patterns. And basically that historical pattern is looking at the last couple decennial censuses and looking at a relatively low level of geographic certainty, something called a census tract, understanding how many students there are, people of student age are actually living in those houses on average. We also have to look at how occupancy is going to build out. You know, a new home's built, it's not necessarily occupied on day 1. So basically we make the assumption that in year 1 of completion, occupancy will be 50% of their final occupancy rate, and then kind of linear growth after that through the 4th year. That's just the little update that we have for that, and then I will pass it back and we'll talk about utilization.
Can I ask a question, or do I have to wait until the very end?
I would wait to the very end.
Okay, so now that we understand kind of where we're at from a projection standpoint, that there is some growth happening, we want to step back and take a little bit of a look at what this means for the district. So one thing we didn't talk about at the beginning really was the number of facilities. So right now we looked at 27 facilities. This does include your support facilities, so we wouldn't necessarily look at capacities for those. And then also the average age of a school. So you're sitting at 32 years, kind of an average age there. So definitely not the oldest by any means in terms of a lot of districts, but that is kind of that point where if you think about replacing a roof, things like that, 20, 30 years, it gets to that point. So you do have a lot of buildings in that average age that are starting to get to that point where maintenance is going to be needed on a regular basis. So that's something to keep in mind. Your oldest school right now is 63 years. You do have 2 that are 63 years old. So obviously more needs there as buildings continue to age. And your newest school obviously just under a year old there. So that also helps increase the average age when you have buildings that are very, very new. As we started to look at the data before we jump back into the utilization and capacity, We're not going to get into all of the kind of deferred maintenance needs, things like that tonight, specifically by building, but we did want to talk about kind of the big buckets of things as we move through this master plan that we're going to want to come back to and talk about. And as I've mentioned a couple times here, deferred maintenance is something every district deals with forever, basically. Doesn't matter how well you take care of buildings, how well you maintain them. Over time, there are going to be needs. Things are going to age out, your HVAC, your windows, your doors, your roofs, things like that. So that is important to keep that plan going, to look out 5-10 years and to continue to do that so you can proactively work through that. As you heard, I think earlier today too, there's also good opportunities there for energy efficiency, things like that, that can also save the district money on the backside. One of the other things we obviously identify as we walk through these buildings is facility upgrades. Sometimes that might be a space you don't currently have, or a space that maybe is not serving education as it continues to evolve. It may be that you need a larger space, things like that. So that's something we're going to look at in detail at each building. Sometimes that also could be, is a building getting too full and you need an addition like you've had to do recently as well. And then that important one there, that building size and capacity. Do we need to add on? Do we need to look at making adjustments to balance students between the different buildings? And then finally, as we talked about, safety and security. When we evaluate this is not saying that buildings are not safe and secure right now, but we know that the world continues to evolve and technology and different methods. As we heard, I think as the state adopts new methodology, that's always going to be something that we want to invest in and plan for proactively. So these are kind of the 4 things that we're going to continue to focus on. Obviously, we need to layer in your priorities as we move forward, but these were kind of the big takeaways from those reports of things that we'll start to talk about in more detail. So I do want to jump back into data since tonight is all about numbers. And as Chris mentioned, the first things that we look at here, trying to kind of walk incrementally through this data, we've got the current building capacity, which we talked about how we came to that conclusion there on the very far left for each building. And then we've got the current enrollment. And I will preface this with, when I speak about current enrollment tonight, that is actually the 2024-2025 data, since we are at the beginning of a new school year. So just a point of reference there. So we are tracking that at high school, middle school, and elementary school level here. As we continue to go through this chart, as Chris just shared, we are looking at 2 projection enrollment numbers. So we're not going to look at every single year. We're going to look at trends, so a 5-year outlook and a 10-year outlook to kind of see if it's trending in a different way or if it's continuing the same way. So as I mentioned, we look at these in terms of kind of that target ideal utilization, over capacity, under capacity, or that nearing capacity. So we've tried to color code this to make it kind of easy to understand what we're looking at here. And this first column we're looking at is the current utilization of buildings. So you start to see there are some that are nearing capacity. There's a few that are noting to be over capacity right now, and one that's looking to be slightly under capacity. So we'll come back to that in a second. But really the important thing, as I mentioned before, is that outlook of 5 and 10 years to see if that trend's continuing. So as you can see here, some of those do continue and some of those do start to correct themselves. So we'll dive in a little bit to each of those categories here. So first, starting to look at those buildings that might be noted as either underutilized or under capacity. We have identified 4 buildings that do fall into that range. But as you see, I don't have a pointer on here. No, I do, okay. Good deal. So as we look here in our current enrollment, that first column there is one building that's showing is underutilized. That's Francis Howell Middle, and it's showing at 74.37%. So as I mentioned, that's kind of a target range, that 75 to 90. So when we look at that, not really necessarily something to be concerned about at the moment. As we look forward 5 years for that one, it does drop just a little bit to 73, but again, not a significant jump. So that's one, just kind of that monitor, kind of wait and see. But it does tell us in 10 years, it does correct itself and get back up there. So usually in that range, that's one of, okay, that makes some sense. That's about in the range though. So unless there's other variables or staffing, things like that need to be evaluated, that one's probably not something really to worry about. And then similarly, look, we look at Barnwell, we're okay for the next 5 years. 10 years, it does drop down to 70%. But again, as Chris mentioned, these are projections and they get more accurate as we get closer. So those are ones we would just usually recommend monitoring. Again, in 5 years, if that's still showing one, maybe that's when we start talking about, does an adjustment need to be made? Is that as efficient as it can be? Can we balance dollars, things like that? And then with these other ones down here, Sager, again, that's Right now, it's showing kind of in that sweet spot. As we get to 5 years out, you're at 70. It does drop down to about 65, 10 years out. So again, that might be one that in 5 years we really want to focus on of, is that getting to a point where staffing's getting challenging? We can't provide some of those services, things like that. So that's one probably would be kind of on that watch list, but probably more in that 5 years when we kind of come back to this. One thing I did not mention at the intro that I should have was typically our recommendation is that you do a major facility master plan update at least every 5 years and then reflect on it yearly just to see if there's any major factors that may have implemented that. Just so that, again, with demographics, things are changing, education's changing. So that would be kind of that point of when you'd want to start to look at that to see, is that trend actually accurate, or does it correct itself or get worse, to see if something's warranted there. And then finally, Harvest Ridge Elementary, it's actually really close, almost to 90% there. This one is probably the biggest jump that we're seeing right now in terms of a decrease. So it's jumping from 87 to 69% in 5 years. So that is one definitely would want to monitor to see if that's accurate, and then continues to actually decrease even more into that 10-year range. So kind of two there that would recommend as part of the master plan to maybe potentially identify some options if that trend is accurate. Okay, so then looking at those buildings that are nearing capacity, again, these are not ones that necessarily any immediate concerns there, but again, just things to monitor. You see there again, the top three, Francis Howell High, North, and then Bryan Middle School. They're in that sweet spot right now, but looking 5 and 10 years out, they get into that warning area. So again, monitor that over the next 5 years, see if those trends are, but they're still not getting to be over capacity. So again, that might be okay depending on what programs you're offering. That's really a conversation of, do they feel full in 5 years, and do we need other offerings there? Same thing with Bryan Middle School, as you see there, kind of getting into that warning range in 5 to 10 years, but now still looking pretty good. As we get down to the elementary schools, though, there are 4 that are on that list in terms of kind of that nearing capacity. 2 of those correct themselves in 5 years, 2 of those, and then the other 2 correct themselves in 10 years. One other item to note here, Henderson Elementary, as we mentioned, this data is from last spring. An addition just opened there this fall. So we believe that has actually already corrected itself based on the additional capacity that was added in that addition. So that brings that down to just kind of those 3 to keep watching. And then finally, looking at those buildings in the 10-year outlook that are currently showing showing over capacity. We do have a couple here. Francis Howell Central High School is showing nearing right now and then getting over capacity in 5 and 10 years. So again, that's one would want to monitor and kind of look at how you're using the building now. That might tell us that actually it's okay, and it may actually be okay in 5 and 10 years depending on how you're staffing and what programs you're offering. This is just kind of that warning of, let's talk about that more and really dive into the programs to make sure this is accurate. And then as we get to those elementary schools, we do have 4 that are showing currently over capacity, 2 that are showing that they're going to continue to trend that way. One other thing to note, I am so sorry. This thing is going backwards. One thing to note here, just like on the approaching capacity, Fairmont also got an addition here that just completed. So that one is also going to correct itself and get it actually into that ideal one. So that's good news that there's already been progress made there. So then we do have Daniel Boone Elementary. That really is the one that continues to trend over capacity. So, and again, that's one we'd want to evaluate and see if that's the reality, if the numbers are accurate in terms of how the building's being run as we go through this process. So this is just that first step to see where we're at, make sure that's correct. And again, sometimes in that next step, we learn more information about how you're using the building and would actually adjust these before the final report comes out. But just some good stuff to start the conversation there. So just a quick summary here. The other thing we typically look at, which I'm not going to go back to the big slide, but one of the things we also want to look at along with each individual building is each learning level and district-wide utilization, because that tells us something as we move into that next phase. So you guys are sitting right about 90% utilized from K to 12. So that's in that kind of target range. It's starting to get towards that kind of nearing capacity, but again, pretty far away from 100. So that's not a bad thing, because that target areas really want to be from an operational and educational efficiency standpoint. There's just your current capacity numbers and enrollment. So about 1,600, if I'm doing math tonight right, 1,600 available capacity right now as we've calculated it. Then if we look at each learning level, elementary school is, as we just saw with all those reds, elementary is sitting at 98% utilized across the district. So what that tells us typically in the next steps is sometimes the district may have, if that's sitting at like 75%, 80%, and you have some buildings that are starting to trend over capacity, sometimes that is when the conversation starts to happen about, do we move boundaries, do we shift kids? But when you're at 98% and there's not necessarily capacity, you also have to then look at where there is capacity, is even geographically close to the other buildings, and a lot of times, as you add the more variables. So that's kind of the first one of, that may not even work if we continue to trend that way. It may be more additions or new builds, things like that, to correct that if the trends and demographics are correct. Middle school, on the other hand, is sitting at 78% utilized. So again, that sweet spot, and that's reflected before. As you see, there really weren't too many that were in that kind of warning zone there. And then finally, high schools were about 92% utilized. So that is a little bit trending up there of as kids continue to grow into that space, that's one we may want to watch and see if there is additional capacity needed or if there can be adjustments made there. So finally, now with all that information, where are we going to go from here? So as I mentioned, we started this process this spring. We've been going through the data and compiling all that the last few months, and then are obviously here tonight sharing kind of this first information and data. There's a lot more data for you guys to get and to understand and for us to process and work through together. The next step, and I think this is going to get sent out tomorrow, is going to be a planning priority survey that I'll talk about here in a second. And that's going to allow the board and district administration to help us kind of create some priorities and a tool that allows us to gauge some of the different process and options in this master plan to make sure that we're funneling alignment with priorities that also align with the strategic plan and making smart choices for the district. And then finally, after we do the planning priorities exercise, we'll start to look at what those options are, some of the stuff we talked about tonight, and then come back with a final recommendation for master plan. Again, that would be an incremental adjustments over the years that could be updated. So with that planning priority exercise, this is just an example from another district we've worked with. But what we do is we send out a survey, we allow everybody to give their individual input, and then we come together in a work session to walk through what all came together, and then we create this roadmap that, I guess we really like roadmaps tonight. So good tools here, but we really talk about those foundational elements for success. We talk about facilities first because, obviously in order to, we've got to take care of the walls and things like that so we can support kids inside. And then we talk about operations and teaching and learning. How do facilities support what you guys are doing to educate kids? The next one was there was a priority there, spirit, openness, and belonging, and then empowerment through space in terms of trying some new things in terms of different opportunities for students. So this will look completely different probably for you guys. The one thing is that number one, that foundational typically does look pretty consistent in terms of things like high quality buildings, safe and security, things like that are all foundational elements for any district to support kids. But then the rest of those may look very different for you guys. But this is going to allow us, as we then move into that next option, to explore where priorities. We know priorities can always be different for different individuals and different stakeholders within the district. So that allows us to kind of guide the process a little bit. And these are just a few examples of things that'll come out in that next phase in terms of explore options. The thing on the top, affectionately call that circles, triangles, and squares, but each of those icons is a building, and that is a tool we use to talk about what we just went through in terms of utilization and capacity. When is a building getting over capacity? Do we need to add on? Do we need to build new? Do we need to adjust boundaries? That sort of thing. So that's a tool we'll walk through with you guys to see for the future steps there. Then we'll also obviously go through just kind of that deferred maintenance facility needs. All of those that we identified in the report, start to actually put numbers to those and talk about what long-term investment would look like, how you can come up with some plans that are maintainable and scalable over time, and then start to look at what that might actually mean for building improvements or other facility upgrades over time, if it's an addition because to deal with capacity, if it's renovations to deal with new programs, things like that. So with that, as I mentioned, I think planning priorities survey would go out tomorrow, and we'll give you guys a couple weeks to share information back on that. We'll work together with the district to kind of bring that together. I believe with the workshop session with you guys in November. And then after that, we'll come back to you with some of the additional options. And then we'll talk about what's next.
Thank you very much. Board, any questions?
Well, I did, but they did get answered as I was a little more patient and listening. Wow.
And remember, you have weeks to go over this. Yeah. So.
The color red is so intimidating. Really, the only thing that popped into my head is knowing that the elementary schools are mostly all red from what we were seeing. And this is just way out there in my thoughts, but if we were to move 5th grade to the middle schools who are underused for temporary time frame, would that help alleviate some of that?
That is definitely something we would explore kind of with that circles, triangles, and squares things. That would be somewhere where we could look at, does that help relieve the pressure for 5 or 10 years or long term, if that's something that the district felt was a priority to balance capacity. And then looking at that from the educational lens of, does that make sense? And again, where are the kids at in the district? That's the other thing. We got to look at just the numbers, but we also got to look at geographically to make sure that travel, all of that, transportation, everything works out. But yeah, that would definitely be one of the scenarios we could look at in that explore options phase.
Thank you.
Other board comments or questions? I have one. The demographic data, did that also include data regarding race, language, and income level?
Yeah, it does. I just didn't have it today.
Gotcha. I just want to make sure because as you see elsewhere in our agenda, you see that a Title I school is using additional funding for instructional coaches and instructional spaces. I just want to make sure as we think through this, we also think about those other types of spaces in the rooms.
Yep.
And lastly, we actually have a date for that meeting, don't we? The facilities conversation that's open to the public?
For the workshop.
Session.
Well, we have it slated for an agenda next Wednesday at 7:45 in the morning to review a date with the board. And but yes, we do have a board date in mind.
Okay. Not confirmed though yet.
Correct.
Thank you. So we'll announce that date so everybody else could be part of that conversation too. So appreciate it. Any other questions? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
All right, Chief Academic Officer Glenn Hancock is here to present an academic update. Welcome, Mr. Hancock.
All right. Good evening, members of the board. I'm excited to have this opportunity to share a high-level overview of our results from our 24-25 school year. During my first 3 months here at Francis Howell, I have learned how the community can come together, help each other, as evidenced by Henderson, the passion for helping students, and the dedication to continuous improvement with our strategic plan agenda that we have. There are a number of positive results to share that will highlight the outstanding hard work of our students, teachers, administrators, staff, and families. And while we're going to highlight a number of positive outcomes this evening, we realize there's also opportunity for continuous improvement and growth, as outlined by Mrs. Joels this evening when she was sharing our KPI data and our goals as part of our strategic plan. Tonight we're going to share results that are related to our Pillar 1 of our strategic plan. And we'll begin by talking just a little bit about MSIP and MSIP 6. So each year, schools receive an annual performance report from MSIP 6. MSIP 6 is the Missouri School Improvement 6th edition, Missouri School Improvement Plan 6th edition, and it provides an overall framework for accrediting and classifying school districts. This 6th edition of MSIP includes a combination of outcome and continuous improvement metrics that we're going to share a little bit about this evening. As we move through the presentation this evening, I'll share a couple of terms, a couple of abbreviations. A few of those might be familiar, a few might be new, such as AP for Advanced Placement. DESE is our Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. EOCs refer to end of course. Typically at the end of high school courses we have EOC exams, part of the MAP test. LEA is the local education agency, so in our case, the Francis Howell School District. Student group, this is Missouri's data identified 5 groups who tend to perform significantly lower than the state average. These students include low-income students, students with disabilities, English learners, students who are Black and Hispanic. DESE then uses this group to perform calculations and perform a student group score. We'll also share our performance metrics that relate to MSIP 6, which include academic achievement. Typically, these include all MAP and EOC assessments. Academic achievement and growth, this is a little bit different. This data we don't have yet. This will come from DESE here in probably another month or 2. We'll send a board update with the growth data. Growth data is calculated each year, and it is different in terms of the number of points that you receive based on how the whole state performs. Success Ready students, data in our Success Ready student group. This will include data related to ACT and advanced placement exams, graduation rate, and graduate follow-up data. Each of these buckets have a certain percentage that the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education utilizes to give us an overall score. And again, that score will come out typically in October or November of this year. As we present a few of our data points this year, or from this last year, we'll be presenting data related to state testing, ACT, graduation, and this data typically happens one time a year. ACT has the opportunity to take it multiple times a year. But we also have a system of assessments and feedback that we provide along the way to help our students know where they're at in relation to the learning targets, including screening and benchmark assessments, assessments that we give, common assessments that we might give as a professional learning community at a PLC, so we can review results together and talk about instructional strategies to support students, and then the ongoing classroom assessments that our teachers give on a regular basis. We use all this information together to help make instructional decisions and pivot and be instructionally agile whenever we need to be. Our first set of data that we're going to share is with our MAP results. As we begin looking at each content area, you'll notice that the percentage of proficient and advanced here, so Francis Howell will be in blue, we'll have the state of Missouri in green, and this will be consistent on many of our slides this evening. You'll notice the percent of proficient and advanced is a little bit different than what Mrs. Joel shared, as she shared a combination of all 4 of the content areas kind of rolled up into one number. Tonight we're going to share each content area separately so you can see the percent of students who are proficient and advanced. So this chart here represents the percentage of all students scoring proficient and advanced on English language arts for the past 5 years. The data includes MAP grade level assessments given in grades 3 through 8 for language arts, and then 10th grade takes an EOC, which is the end of course exam after their sophomore year of English. They call that the English 2 EOC. You can see here there's a slight increase from the 23-24 school year, and it continues to be above the state level. In addition, we had several grade levels that also increased their proficiency from last year as well. This next chart also represents English language arts. However, it is only our students in our student group. As it was shared this evening with our goals towards our strategic plan, we have a goal for all students and a goal for our student group. That goal for our student group is 50%. So the data here represents the comparison of Francis Howell and how our student group scored with also how Missouri student group scored. And again, this is also English language arts for the past year. And you'll see there's a slight increase in our students in our student group. And we also saw an increase from our prior year of many grade levels as well. This slide shares, this is math. Again, same data with our Francis Howell being in blue and Missouri being in green. And this represents the percentage of all students scoring proficient advanced as well. And for math, we also include grades 3 through 8 with our MAP test, and the EOCs from our high school math courses that would include Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and sometimes geometry. Students will take the geometry if they need one more math EOC. If they, for example, they end up taking geometry prior to getting to high school, they would take that EOC. You can notice there was an increase from our 23-24 school year, and it also continues to be above. This was our highest percentage of students scoring proficient and advanced in the last 5 years here. And again, we had several grade levels, nearly almost all grade levels had an increase from the prior year in terms of percent proficient and advanced. When I switch the slide, we're now looking still at math, but now with students in our student group. You also notice, again, a slight increase from our prior year and continues to be above the state level in terms of how our students are scoring in math. This also is the highest in the past 5 years as well for our students in our student group with math. For science, we see a slight increase again from our 23-24 school year into 24-25. And is our second highest percentage in the last 5 years for our students, for all students in science. And then switching to our students in our student group with science, again, a similar theme, students improving from last year, also scoring above the state percentage of students in proficient advanced, and again, we had increases in 8th grade and biology. Science is offered in, science scores are offered in grades 5, 8, and then biology EOC. So typically after students take the biology course, they would take the biology in a course exam. And then we have social studies. Social studies is only assessed in government, which is a high school course. And this shows that we had a slight decrease from our prior year. Still continues to be above our state percent proficient and advanced level. And this also is our second highest percentage of students proficient advanced in 5 years. And like all students, we also had a decrease in our student score and proficient advanced within our student group. Switching gears over to success-ready students, so looking at metrics that look at college and career readiness data such as ACT, such as advanced placement and taking college-level courses. We have a lot of areas to celebrate and share this evening. With ACT, first chart shows that ACT, we did have a small decline from our prior year with our composite score. So in our graph here, we're using our students' best attempt. They might take multiple attempts on the ACT. This is using their best attempt overall. We're seeing a trend that ACT is beginning to be utilized for a number of colleges are increasing the utilization of an ACT again, or an SAT, some type of college readiness assessment. Shortly after 2020, we saw a little bit of a decrease in that usage of it. Now we're seeing a trend back up again with there. We do offer our ACT for all junior students as an opportunity to take ACT, and looking at providing additional opportunities for students that might have an assessment that pairs well with going into maybe a job right after high school, might be a post-secondary trade school. We have a couple or military, so we also have a couple of other assessment opportunities that we're going to be increasing moving forward this year. In addition to the overall ACT, we do monitor the frequency, because as the number of times the student participates in the ACT, there is evidence that there is an increase in scores. You become familiar with the format and opportunity to take it. We did have an increase again this year with average number of times the student takes the ACT up to 1.63. For advanced placement, AP exams, students have the opportunity to participate in advanced placement exams. The College Board, authors of the AP exams, started to move several exams or portions of them to online. In some years, there was options online available to students, and they could elect into taking online. But beginning at 24-25, several of these exams only had the ability of being online, or a portion of the exam had to be online. And so many of our students and teachers had to pivot last year to switching to online. And you can see there was a lot of positive results here. We had the highest number of exams taken in a long time, with over 2,200 exams taken by over 1,100 students. And these are really positive numbers to not only see that the number of exams are increasing, the number of opportunities we're providing students to get opportunities at college level courses, but as you'll see on the next slide, that the percentage of students scoring 3 and above, that also is increasing. So that's really impressive to not only continue to grow the number of exams and the number of students taking them, but also the number of students scoring 3 or above. 3 or above significant because college and universities typically usually accept the 3 or above as a score that you can get college credit for in a similar course at the college level. So this shows we had 83% of our students, or I'm sorry, 83% of our exams getting a 3 or better. But we also, when you look at students, 84% of our students that participate in at least one exam, many of our students participate in multiple AP exams, scored a 3 or better. So again, some really great work by our students, teachers, staff with these accomplishments. Switching to graduation data, the Department of Secondary and Elementary Education, they report graduation data 4, 5-year, also even 6 and 7-year graduation data. We typically show the 4 and 5-year data. We don't have the state data at the moment in terms of graduation rate, but we do have our Francis Howell graduation rate data with 96% of our students, so slight increase from 24, the class of 24, and 96.8%, nearly 97% from our class of 2025, graduated within 5 years of their original 9th grade date. And then we also follow up with students, what do they plan to do as they are looking to enter, after they leave high school and enter the world. And we can see that we have an increase in a few areas, and where we see a drop in one area, it's usually because they shifted to another area. So, you know, for example, a small decrease in 4-year, but a slight increase in 2-year. So overall, our percent of students enrolling in a 2- and 4-year college increased to 78.6%. And then those that are also going to post-secondary technical institution also increased this past year as well. We again follow up with our class of 25 about 180 days after to ensure, hey, this is what they shared they were going to be doing, and we kind of follow up with them to learn a little bit more from them when their 180-day follow-up survey. And then in summary, overall, again, a lot of great celebrations here, a lot of great work moving in the right direction. The percent of all students scoring proficient and advanced increased for ELA, math, and science for not only all students, but also students in our student group. The number of AP exams was at an all-time high. Our percent of students scoring 3 or above is at an all-time high, and that also the exams. And then the continued focus on our PLCs that are working together to support instruction. In terms of next steps, we will continue planning and implementing the work within Pillar 1. We'll continue our work with our new K-5 ELA resource, curriculum and resource. We'll begin selecting a new resource for our grades 6 through 8. Our multi-tier systems of support, MTSS, that will be work that will be beginning with the leadership team. Continue professional learning for staff, collaborating with other districts, learning what they're doing for success. Data reviews and action planning, and assessment writing and implementation. And those assessments are important because it gives an opportunity to give feedback to students so we can tell them where they're at in relation to the target and kind of what's next in their learning journey. And I appreciate being able to share a little bit this evening. Are there any questions I can help you with?
I do, sorry.
Okay.
Have no problem. Okay, question about like MAP scores. We know we only get that data once a year. Benchmarks, are they being taken 3 times a year? Are we writing the benchmarks, or did we purchase them from some curriculum?
We have a combination a little bit. We have several that we've written, but we also use screening and benchmark assessments like InStar and iReady in some cases.
Okay, and then are those systems tracking growth, not just summatives, but like growth over time? Can we see that trajectory for students, like something in like Tableau or something like that?
Yes, and we use a product called EduClimber to help look at that.
Just got that at Parkway.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty wild. Love it. Okay, cool. I was just curious.
Yep.
Thank you.
Other comments, board?
Just a question on, say for instance, your MAP ELA, the scores are flatlined from 21, and then are basically, if you look at math, we're flatlined. But then our mission statement says 70% of all students. That's, if we're flatlined over 5 years, I mean, you guys are going to be hardcore after it. So I guess, what steps are you taking now to increase the to get to 70% in 5 years.
Yeah, I appreciate. So we're seeing incremental increases right now. The addition with our new ELA program that we're implementing, that will be a huge step in the right direction, a huge support. Have that consistency and the coherence with our instruction. The work with our MTSS, our multi-tier system support. So really, we are working to make sure we're providing the right intervention at the right time for students. So as we improve that accuracy and work with that, that will aid and assist in that work as well. Same with math, we're also seeing a slight increase each year. And so by kind of putting those things together with consistent instruction, continued discussion with instruction, our multi-tier systems of support, working to ensure we have right interventions at the right time, if you will. And then also looking ahead to the future, that portrait of a graduate that Mrs. Joels mentioned, that will be a huge asset as well. So we can begin planning for what are the key things we want students to leave with, those employable skills and such we want students to leave with.
Question also, why do we have, if so many students, if they're going to go to work after high school or they're going to enter a trade, what's the point of having all the juniors take an ACT?
Yeah, on the ACT, there is an opportunity to get what they call a work keys type of average on where you're at. So we do have the opportunity to give the work keys assessment, which a lot of St. Louis communities have, I should say, job-ready jobs in the St. Louis community and even St. Charles community have kind of looked at the available jobs they have, what are the skills that are required for those jobs, and they've matched it up with a work keys type of kind of job-ready skill set that would be ready. So we do have the opportunity to provide the work keys assessment also, which gives them a little bit of an industry credential, if you will, to say, hey, if I'm a silver score, if you will, these are the kind of jobs that I won't say pre-qualified for, but almost pre-qualified for. So we have the opportunity to do that, and Dr. O, our assessment director, is working on creating that system to kind of give the right assessment opportunity at the right time. We also, though, can use that data from the ACT to know where do we maybe need to support or improve the instruction in those certain areas. So they could use those scores to know, okay, I need to increase my math, I need to work on maybe my English, and I can use that to help target it before maybe I take my work keys. But we are working on a plan to help students identify what assessment would be best for them. That's almost part of the ICAP portion of the work, to identify where we're going next in my journey and what's the right assessment that's going to have me ready for where I'm going.
Other questions? One number thing, slide 8 might need some updating. The slide information there is different than the slide information. Yep. That's one piece. One other piece is that the ACT, you now have a super score that is really a great gift to any student. I have a senior whose super score is better than my score. And I was trying to explain to him we had a little extra advantage, so we have a little rivalry at our house kind of deal. But in here, it looks as if 86% of the students took the ACT once, then 36 took it twice. And it seems as if, especially if you have that high number going to college, that somewhere along the way, something's being missed, some communication part is being missed. And so it seems as if having people taking the ACTs 2 times, 3 times would be a value that we can lean into a little bit, because it's a huge asset to be able to take your best math score from every single time you take it, your best science score and all that.
Yeah, well, you mentioned that real quick. When you look back at 18, 19, and 20, when it was kind of more of a factor in terms of college entrance, you can see that you had almost 50% to more than 50% taken it 2 times or more. As you know, ACT opportunities were in decline, where we just didn't have spaces open for students to take the ACT. It started, and colleges started to not require that. It was like a test optional started to be a play. But you do start to see it going back up in terms of the number of students taking it 2 or more.
I mean, I would communicate the next line, the average score, depending on how many times you've taken it. I mean, I think that's just incredible information just to share among the other things you're already doing regarding communication.
I think though the first time we pay for it, but then any times after that, the parents have to pay for it.
Correct.
And that could be the reason.
Yeah, might be worth looking into as well if there's some people who are stalled because of that. Any other questions regarding this?
Yeah. How many kids took it? I'm I'm assuming it's one. 9 times in 25.
That's what you gotta do is go.
At 35, if that's like 15 kids, we're doing something right.
I don't know off the top of my head, but we can find it out.
One kid took it 9 times.
I want to call mine, and first of all, I want to thank Director Harm for calling this out. You know, the strategic plan is not just some fancy words on some beautiful paper, but just be able to say, you know, this is what we want putting back towards. So, Director Harmon, thank you for identifying that and saying, you know, we're excited about what you're going to be presenting. Everybody within all 4 pillars, but whether it's next month or beyond, the board's interested in knowing what it looks like to support the work of the administration, the teachers, and not only for the entire population, but just to name the scores for the student group is lagging behind, and it's not okay. I know we all share that it's not okay, and whatever we need to do to help support those endeavors, I think the board shares a commitment to that. So I appreciate that. You know, your comments, board? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, well, one more presentation. SM Wilson will be, SM Wilson representatives are here to provide an FHN odor update.
Good evening. My name is Mark Cochran with SM Wilson. I'm just going to give a real quick update from our last presentation we gave to you. As you recall, we did some testing on the municipal sewer system and determined some pressure in that, implemented a temporary solution. Since that time, we've had no reports of odors since our last updates with that. Again, I'm just there's some graphics here real quick that we presented before, and just slide through these fairly quickly. That's the current situation where we've allowed the pressure to escape the manhole. And this is the proposed permanent solution. And where we are right now, we're meeting weekly with our design team and partners on that. We are expecting to have those engineered drawings on early next week. When we get those, we will concurrently move forward with review with the city of St. Peters, but also procuring the necessary materials and equipment for that. And we believe that probably by the end of October, we will have the permanent solution in place and fully operational. Again, we're meeting weekly with Saloom and his team and our design partners, and keeping up to date with that. So that's the update we have with the odor situation.
Any questions, board?
No reports of any odors?
No.
That's wonderful.
This is a record for quickest update.
Had to wait a long time.
Had to wait a long time. But thank you very much, and we'll continue to reach out if there's anything pops up.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Delaney, interim superintendent comments.
Thank you, President Blair. I'd like to start my comments tonight with some positive news. And we're pretty confident that everyone in this room and those watching online would agree we could all use a little positive news in our lives. We're on a mission to spotlight incredible people who bring the one Howell spirit to life. And one of the ways we're doing that is through our new Humans on Howell series on social media. Our first feature, if you saw it, was Winnie, a Daniel Boone first grader who was spotted picking up trash at a football game. Her story is a great reminder that small actions can make a big difference. I want to personally thank Winnie for seeing an issue and addressing it. Winnie, your help goes a long way in supporting other staff at Francis Howell High, the staff members at Francis Howell High School, in ways that she will never know. When you think about the way that a football stadium looks like after a football game, Winnie was a tremendous help. If you know someone that has a story worth sharing, we would love for people across the district to share it with our communications team. We'd like to highlight these great pieces of work.
Mr. Delaney, can we pause to have a round of applause for Winnie?
Absolutely.
For Winnie.
Winnie, I hope you watch the recording and you're not up this late. Two FHSD teachers, Tara Richards and Michelle Ridlin, were surprised this week with the 2025 Emerson Excellence in Teaching Award. I had the honor of being there on Monday when they were surprised along with their coworkers. Tara Richards, a 6th grade geography teacher at Francis Howell Middle, has spent more than 20 years inspiring students and supporting fellow educators. Michelle Ridlin, an art teacher at Francis Howell Central, is known for her inclusive approach, creating opportunities for all students to thrive. Both teachers will be celebrated at November's board meeting. Another positive moment worth highlighting, I want to congratulate a member of our transportation team. FHSD bus mechanic Matt Jockenheffer placed 4th in a statewide competition. Missouri's Best Technician and Inspector event was an event that brought together the top mechanics and inspectors from across the state for a hands-on competition, testing skills in diagnostics, repairs, and inspections. Way to represent FHSD. We're proud to have Matt on our team. And speaking of transportation, we desperately need bus drivers. Francis Howell buses continue to run a little bit later than expected, and we know this causes challenges for our students and our families. Safe and reliable transportation is a priority for us, but like many districts, we face a critical shortage of bus drivers. We currently have 27 full-time driver openings and 4 monitor openings, which is more than about 10% of our workforce. To cover routes, office staff, mechanics, and even coaches with CDLs are stepping in to drive. Many drivers are also doubling back to run multiple routes, which leads to a little bit of a delay. While these solutions help, they're not sustainable long term. That's why we need the community's help and the people in this room. We are actively recruiting drivers, offering paid training, providing competitive pay and benefits. New drivers start out at $23 an hour, with pay increasing to $27 in their second year. Drivers also receive benefits, paid breaks, and a public school pension. We hosted 2 bus driver job fairs in September and conducted 10 on-the-spot interviews. Those candidates are moving through the hiring process now. If you know someone who might make a great bus driver, please have them fill out our district, visit our district website and fill out a short application. We are about a month into our school year now, and many are wondering how the new cell phone ban is going. I had the opportunity to check in with principals recently, and they report that it has gone much better than expected. During lunch and after finishing assignments, students are engaging in conversations with one another. They're reading books, they're playing games, and even passing the old school notes that many of us in this room remember. We're told that the volume level in the cafeterias has gone up because kids are actually talking with each other rather than scrolling on those phones. We're really proud of our students for how they've adapted, our teachers and our staff for ensuring they abide by that ban, and our parents for their encouragement from home. Since students no longer have access to their phones during the school day, they can't text from lunch to ask a parent to load money into their lunch account. With this in mind, we're taking extra steps to notify families if their student's lunch account balance is negative. Families now receive a weekly text message if their student's lunch account balance has fallen below that line. These reminders go out on Friday morning at 9:30 a.m. In addition to the low balance reminder, email messages that guardians are placed to guardians so that they receive those as well. We hope this additional communication method helps families stay informed. I also want to remind families that the deadline to apply for free and reduced lunch is September 30th. I want to remind everyone that all Francis Howell schools are closed tomorrow so that our teachers and staff can engage in professional development. And I finally want to close with my appreciation for all of our staff and families. I've been very fortunate to be across the district in every one of our schools, both during the day to see kids and teachers and other staff in action, and also into the evenings at different athletic and activities across the district. Our people in all positions work extremely hard to make sure students in this district have great experiences. It takes all of us to make sure that happens. I also have been fortunate to witness the hours and the impact of volunteers across this district, from boosters at sporting events and activities to PTO events like the Daniel Boone Color Run that I got to see yesterday, which was a pretty awesome experience. It takes all of us working together to make a difference for our kids, and just want to say thank you.
Thank you. Board, does anybody have a comment?
Yeah, first I'd like to say I'd like to thank Mr. Delaney and his entire executive team for being accessible, willing to listen to each one of our different personalities and things that we ask for. I really appreciate that being able to access most any of you at any point in time, and you take time to listen and to care. On a happy note, I got to go happier even. Well, I didn't tell you that right. Okay, on another happy note, how about that? I got to go to the first responders football game, and I sat in the area where the ball was just laying there on the ground, and one of our guys just came up and just grabbed it, and he was right there at the goal line. It was a beautiful thing, and I hope to see more of that in the future. Man, that was really even though some of us had to watch, I don't know, something was going on down in Venezuela or something. Remember, you said you weren't there because you were watching that. But anyway,
there was a Friday night Chiefs game in Brazil.
That's it. Anyway, but I know as a district we have still a lot of things that we need to work on. But I know that we have a lot of the right people in place to get those things done.
Okay. I wanted to say thank you to all of the hockey families and the hockey players that came tonight to share their help, their concern, their wish, and their willingness to communicate and collaborate on what hopes to be the future of their involvement with Francis Howell. And I also wanted to share on a positive note that this week I got to go and participate at a PTO meeting at Warren Elementary School. And as the school years are getting started, I know that all of those PTOs are getting up and ready for a full year of fundraising and supporting the teachers in the building. And I was amazed by the military level of precision and everything that they were pulling together to support their buildings and their students and their teachers. It was absolutely amazing. And I got sorted into my house, and my house is Ubuntu, which I read more about, and I am absolutely grateful that is something I get to be part of now. So that was wonderful.
I would just like to kind of reiterate what Sarah said. I played sports all my life, and I think I've said this to everybody before, but I was that kid that was not included. I played hockey. You know, it was my favorite sport. I just happened to be better at baseball. I don't know why. But it's near and dear to my heart. I understand where they're coming from. I think there's a common ground and a middle place that we can all try to find that everybody can get to. So the other thing is, I'm glad that Mr. Delaney shared the news that our kids are experiencing what we experienced in the 80s without cell phones and things like that in school and passing notes. I don't know if that's a good thing, but we'll see how that works out. But I was going back and forth on it. Like you said, the updates of the lunches, and I don't know what I'm going to do. How am I going to get lunch? Those things can be worked out. But I do think it's getting back to a focus of friendship and camaraderie and just being around each other and talking to each other versus just having your face buried in a screen is what we need to get back to. I mean, Lord knows they probably are buried in them at home anyway. So I think that's a great thing. So thanks for sharing that, Mark.
Director provides attention to the information items there. That information is there for your review. I want to call to mind the board collective commitments. That's a different term you've seen before. Basically, part of our training in August included ways that we could be more efficient. And if we're more efficient, the administration can be more efficient. It allows more time to be spent not with the board, but with teachers and admin. And so I'd like to invite anybody if they want to look at the board collective commitments to see how we are committing ourselves to be a healthier, better board and learning along the way. My last board comment was, again, a thank you. When my oldest was 3 years old, 4 years old, I ran into somebody who I respected very much who just said, I can never have too many people in my kid's life that love them. And it sounds like a very simple thing to say, whatever it was, it stuck with me. But Tamika, it was neat seeing the principal just smiling ear to ear and realizing all the teachers she was referring to, and some of us with kids in the district or outside. We can never have too many adults in the lives of our kids that love them, and for the teachers who are part of it, for the staff, for the employees, for everyone who realizes that for every number we look at tonight that matters, represents a kid that matters. And just want to say a collective thank you for every single employee who leads with their heart, and to make sure that kids experience love upon love upon love, because we don't know which kid was a little bit thirstier for that love that day. And I just wanted to affirm that and thank everyone, if you're listening and beyond, for making Francis Howell School District a great school district. To the rest of the administration, here's your job description for the next month, and we believe in you. And once again, the very, very best of Francis Howell is ahead of us, and we're glad to be able to join together to make that happen. Board, I'd like to have a motion to adjourn open session and return to closed session. Director Pushkar, seconded by Director Ponder. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. Motion passes, and thank you all for being here.